Top five.
Yeah, girl, you ready to do this? You ready to count this thing down? We're doing the top five, her. Yeah, let's set it off with 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ranked Top 5 List of Stuff That Don't Matter, and Happy New Year! Happy New Year! Wait, hang on. I got it. Happy New Year!
Flush.
Everyone, it feels so good to be in 2024 because every year we kick off Ranked and the Pod Cavern with one of my favorite episodes to record. It takes a lot of time to prepare for this episode and a lot of money, and we do it with the same group of people who get paid very handsomely, I might add. Angus MacDonald, Ethan Howieson, Mathew Whalley, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was hoping you would mention that this is definitely the most expensive episode of the year, and I will make a $60 or $70 purchase just being like, well, I gotta know for the podcast.
It is for the podcast, but like I said, every year we get paid handsomely. In NFTs, actually. We get paid NFTs,
yeah.
So
those will be around forever.
We haven't cashed in yet because we're waiting for it to peak.
Well,
they're
non-fungibles. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Angus, Ethan, Matthew, how has your 2023 been in general and in gaming, but mostly in general right now?
I had another kid.
What?
And as much as I love both my children, shout out to you sweeties at home, it gets in the way of gaming. A lot of games are horrifically violent, and children, I hear, are not supposed to be exposed to that. But they were.
Is there a certain age where, because I know some parents, it's like at the very beginning, it's fine. The babies, they're not aware of what's happening. It doesn't matter. But once they start getting in their 2s and 3s,
once they start asking for you to chop the heads off, you're probably over the age.
Yeah. Angus,
similar. It's been a busy year for me. I started a new job, and
I thought this is similar because you also had a baby, but that would have been a surprise to me.
Not that I'm aware of. No. Busy year in life, and also very busy in gaming. So many things I wish I could have played, but didn't. That's gonna be the thesis for the honorable mentions. It's gonna be a lot of me being like, I wish I played that.
Isn't that I feel like every year, if you were to play back all of these Game of the Year episodes, we always start with, man, I wish I got to play more games.
I think this year, for me at least, I feel like I missed the most games. I don't know. We'll see though.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah,
but you're probably right. And Tuong, cut in here all the previous years where I said that.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Just edit that in.
I'll get right on it. Ethan, how's your baby doing?
Oh, my baby's doing great.
Oh,
the new car is fantastic.
New car. Oh. Are you one of those people who names their car as soon as you get it?
No, I'm not.
He waits a couple years.
But you know those people out there, right? They immediately name their car, and I don't. I mean, no judgment, maybe a little. I don't name my car, but Angus, Matthew.
Actually, I do name my car.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
I haven't had a name for my car since I was a little child.
What did you name your car, Angus?
We called it Little Blue because it was a little blue car.
Now, Matthew, as a grown adult, what do you name your car?
I name all my cars Camille the automobile.
That's very sweet.
That's very good.
I thought it was going to be like a Bloodborne character, like Cantiferax.
That's great.
This is the nurse of Menzies.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, like I said before, we do this episode, Game of the Year, every single year, pretty much since the first year of Ranked, we've been doing this. Ethan, how many years has it been since is this year 5 or 6? I can't even remember.
2017, I think, was the first one we did.
First one? So
I think I was on 2018.
all right. Well,
Yeah,
we've been
I have a list here. I have my list for 2018 right here.
incredible.
Right on.
So we've been doing this for a long time, which is again why we get paid a lot, and also why people they wait for this episode to drop. You know, like a lot of websites out there, IGN, your GameSpots, your Giant Bombs, your Nextlanders, Polygon, whatever. They
Jeff
make
Keighley.
Jeff Keighley. They drop their list in December, middle of December. Us, we're like, no, we're professionals. People will wait for us. We're gonna spend the break playing video games. Kind of.
And not get them all in.
Not get them all in. And then we'll make you wait until like middle of January where you still kind of care about last year's games. You still kind of care, but not as much. But we make you care again. In gaming in general, I want to say like, I always like to do like a little bit of highlight reels of the things that happen. I won't get into everything, but it felt like quite a year in gaming. Wouldn't you say?
Oh,
Yeah.
Insane. Someone quoted this very well, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was a fantastic year for product, but it was a terrible year for people who made that product,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, if you're not really tapped into the gaming world, then welcome. We talk a lot about video games, and we might spoil things, maybe not, but
This is a hard episode for you to get in on.
it's kind of impenetrable. We'll do our best. But
I don't like games, but I'll give it a shot.
2023 for gaming, like I honestly think in terms of product, one of the best in years. Like there's just been
Agreed.
so much phenomenal games, and I'm excited about the conversation we're going to have because I can kind of maybe tell what our top 2 or 3 is going to be, but it could be anything where in previous years, it's like, we all know it's Elden Ring, for example. But also in terms of the people making the games, there's been tons of layoffs, tons of people who are losing their jobs and benefits and all these things. And also hackers are getting into huge studios that used to be impenetrable fortresses, Rockstar, Insomniac, and being like extorted for their money. And that's no good. So I just wanted to shout that out because it's always weird celebrating games when the people who make the games are not doing so well. So hopefully they can all find jobs and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
I totally.
Okay.
You can reach out to Tuong from the Pod Cavern for a job in
Absolutely.
making games. We got a great new project on.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
man, could you imagine the game that the 4 of us would come up with?
Yeah, our game is an NFT. It's also non-fungible.
It's a non-fungible game. We put the fun in non-fungible.
Yeah. What else came out? Lots of VR headsets came out this year. PSVR 2, MetaQuest 3. We also had like a ton of Steam Deck like peripheries, like a new Steam Deck, like the OLED version, and just a bunch of like everyone copying the Switch kind of mentality of like everything has to be a handheld, which I have not bought a new handheld. Did you guys buy into any of that stuff?
No.
I'm waiting to see what
honestly-
Nintendo announces.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it though. Maybe in the future.
I'm always thinking about it. I bought one of those backbone controllers that go behind your phone and stuff like that. Turns your phone into like a gaming setup so you can stream your PlayStation. And that works fine. A lot cheaper than the Portal. But anyways, I digress. There's tons of video games to talk about. And before we get into it, let's get into the ground rules of today's episode. And they're going to be very much like every year, but we'll see if any new rules pop up. Angus, what are some ground rules?
The game has to have an official release date within 2023.
Oh, yeah? Even
Well, I don't know.
because we've talked about what's early access games before.
That's what I mean. Like an early, I guess, yeah, you're right. Because like a game that's in early access right now during this year is fine. But a game that released this year, I would say is also
fine.
Maybe not. I was about to say better, but that's not true. Just a game that's because like what about a game that's been in early access for 6 years?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is tough. I would say if this is the year that the early access game really felt like it's pretty much done. Like
Or
it's
maybe
very like
maybe it started early access this year or it ended early access this
Sure.
year. You know what I mean? I don't know.
If
I
it
feel
comes
like we'll
up-
feel it out.
if it comes up, I'm sure we can talk it out. Ethan, any ground rules you want to cover for this year?
Yeah, it's got to be a video game.
Gotta be a video game. No
Gotta
board
be a
games.
video game.
Unless
Harsh.
the board
Yep.
game
No
is
board-
also a video
yeah.
game.
Harsh,
I know
but
it's
fair.
harsh.
Yeah. Matthew, anything?
This was a late entry from a previous year, but if you do want to nominate a game from a prior year, it has to have undergone a substantial change that makes it effectively a new game. We're talking Monster Hunter Iceborne levels of like update.
Yes,
I agree.
True.
I agree with that. That's a very good rule.
That one's a tricky one in the way with, because Iceborne was a DLC, right? So we've always talked about like a DLC that is sizable, like a standalone expansion type of thing. That definitely counts. What about a game like just base Cyberpunk, let's say, for example? That one went through its biggest change this year. Maybe it'll come up. There's another Cyberpunk-like thing that I think we can mention, but that's when
I think that one in particular. First of all, you didn't save it for the cast.
I know.
So you're no longer allowed on video game.
See you later, guys.
Oh, Angus is CEO now.
Angus, take my crown.
Thank you. It's too small. You take it back.
Yeah.
No, I get what you mean. I think that's I think that's the kind of game where that one would feel appropriate to me. I know I'm a bit biased in that I'm a big fan of that game, but to me, that has had such a monumental change to it that I would say it's fine. It's and also got a very sizable
That's what I mean. That's
expansion.
why I felt okay saying base game because it got an expansion this year. Which
we haven't said the expansion.
We didn't say it. I'll take my crown back.
Okay, there you go.
And I think
Ethan's now king.
Oh no!
Finally, we're gonna combine anime and video games now.
Excellent.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah, this year only anime. That's a ground rule. Only anime video games.
Amazing. Okay, I got one.
I got
our
one
number one.
I got one.
I technically have one, so I'm in there.
I don't think I do.
All right, see you later, Angus. I think that's it for ground rules, right? I feel like every year we kind of forget, but we're talking about video games, everyone. What do you want from us?
Well, and this is really for the person who decided to jump in on this episode in particular.
You know, there are people out there who just love video games and they want to hear from us because we know so much. Oh, here's something I want to say. We joke a lot about how we get paid handsomely for this. We don't. The reason why I want to shout it out specifically for ground rules is that, hey, we aren't paid video game people. We love video games, but we're not getting sent review codes, and it's not our day job to do this. We just play a lot of them, and we treat it like a job that doesn't pay us any money. Yeah. But with that said, if we miss a nomination, you're like, oh, you should have played this one, you fuckers, then I'm sorry.
We're sorry.
But fuck you.
Yes.
All right. Shall we get into it?
Let's get into it.
Yes, sir.
Do it.
Okay, just like every episode of Ranked, we're going to go around 3 times, nominating 3 nominations each, making a master list of 12, and whittling that down to a top 5 video games of 2023. Oh boy.
Top 5 anime video games. 2023.
Let me just cross off most of my list. All right. I will be transparent and say that this year has been tough in terms of figuring out what my favorite video game is. There's a lot of close calls this year, but unlike, it's weird though, even though I just said that like this year had some of the best in many, many years, when I was making a list of 10, which I do every year, I like to make ordered list of 10 just to kind of wrap my head around what I played. Once I got to like number 7 and up, it kind of... I don't know. I wasn't that passionate about like the back half of my list, but the first half of my list feel pretty good about. So my first game I'm going to nominate should be no surprise to anyone. We're going to go with a big hitter, something that is a breath of fresh air, but
God damn it, man. Stop titillating
but giving me a tear because it's so good. I'm talking Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is my first nomination.
It's a good one.
It's a good
What's
one.
that game?
Yeah, I have lots to say, and I'll try to condense it and not spoil anything, but it is the sequel to Breath of the Wild, one of the biggest, probably the biggest Zelda game of all time, if you really think about it. Years will tell if it's bigger than Ocarina, but it is certainly one of the most influential games in recent memory that has... influence a ton of like open world action RPG like games since. Yeah, so Breath of the Wild came out and it blew everyone's socks off, and we talked about it in Game of the Year one time, and I really loved it. But
did it win Game of the Year that year?
It did not. I don't think.
It didn't?
I don't think so.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
And it wasn't even my Game of the Year that year too, even though I loved it. I loved Mario Odyssey even more. But this time around. And I'll say I didn't even finish Breath of the Wild. I played it for like 150 hours. I played it twice, and I did pretty much everything except beat Ganon because I didn't want the experience to end. And then some other games came out, and then it was far too late to return to that experience. So I feel like I beat it, but not officially. With Tears of the Kingdom, I came in with like, I really took my time playing this game. I really wanted to milk it for what it's worth, because as soon as we heard that there was going to be a sequel to Breath of the Wild, like a lot of people got excited. And for me specifically, I got somewhat excited, but I wasn't like fully on board, mostly because I'm like, oh, it looks the same. It has the same art style. Obviously, it's a sequel. Will it have enough to justify its sequelness? Or is it going to be weird like Majora's Mask, for example? And I'm happy to I'm happy to report that I feel as though Tears of the Kingdom is a significant upgrade for a very amazing game to begin with. And the new systems that they built into Tears of the Kingdom, like, listen, they spent like the last 7 years, I think 6. Maybe, I don't know. However long the Switch has been out for, instead of making a brand new Zelda game from the ground up, they used the engine of the old one and spent all of that resource time like expanding that world and breaking it in very interesting ways. And I say breaking it because it feels as though the devs got in there, saw all of these people on Twitch and all the speedrunners out there, all the people who are using those abilities from Breath of the Wild to do some crazy anime-like shit with Link. And they're like, how do we harness that and give the player in Tears of the Kingdom these new abilities to fuck around with and really kind of expand what you can do? And I think the new abilities are amazing in Tears of the Kingdom. The ability to like build stuff, build a bunch of fun vehicles. You might have seen it on the internet. There was months and months of people building the most insane things in Tears of the Kingdom. The Ascend ability, where you can basically just jump up into any
flat surface,
and then you just appear above it. Amazing. Incredible. And even the story, I thought the story was a lot better than Breath of the Wild, in my opinion. And I spent like 150 hours into that game, and I really loved it. And one of the things that I really like about Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is this concept of like, you, the player, can really decide how long you want to spend in this world. If you want to finish this game in 20 hours and just mainline the whole thing without doing any side stuff, whatever, you could probably do that. If you want to spend 100 hours into it, you can do that. I just talked to a colleague of mine who spent 380 hours into Tears of the Kingdom before beating it. So it's fun, the idea that you can really decide when the game ends and when you've had enough of it. And yeah, I have much more to say, but anyways, you guys played it.
Yeah. I am in the same camp as you. I enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom a lot more than Breath of the Wild. It felt like each ability was a natural evolution of what they sort of established in Breath of the Wild, certainly giving you a greater range of stuff to do and toys to play with. The Ascend ability was great because there's just so much more. Like for those who haven't played Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. This is probably going to happen a lot. For those who haven't played Tears of the Kingdom, they took the mainland Hyrule, and then they added a world above it and a world below it. So now you effectively have 3 massive country-sized maps to explore. And the Ascend ability is just great because now you can really just sort of focus on going. You don't have to get caught up in the, how do I get up there? You just use the ability and you get up there, which is great because there's just so much to see in this game, which at times can work against it because there is so much to see while working towards one of those objectives, like an objective I set for myself. I want to go see that thing. I'd get sidetracked and I'd lose that. It happened all the time in Breath of the Wild, and it was amplified 3-fold in this game because there's 3 times as much stuff to see. Depending on how you like to play games, that may not be a mark against it for you, but for me it was because much like Breath of the Wild, I did not finish this game. I wanted to, but there was a point where I had to go and do like a little side quest to sort of initiate the next dungeon. And I'm like, okay, I'll go do the side quest. And every time I started going that direction, someone would just pull my attention away. And then I think it took me like a solid 2 weeks to try and get to that objective marker before a new game came out. I'm like, well, I spent a lot of time on this game. It's time for me to play something else.
But like, really, I think that's like a point for it in a way. Elden Ring is like that too.
Of course.
Where it's just like, yeah, of course you set a marker for yourself, but I love the idea that you can just discover so much in Tears of the Kingdom, and games that just surprise you with the amount of stuff in the open world always gets to me. Like, there's so many unique areas in Tears of the Kingdom if you poke around, and a lot of times you get rewarded by just poking around what's around the corner. You know, usually they're Korok seeds or like, you know, another shrine and things like that. And you will see over the course of like dozens and dozens and dozens of hours where things start repeating, but the magic lasts for a long time before you start seeing like, you know, how the sauce gets made. Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah. We'll have more to say later, but how about we go to Angus?
Yeah. So Tuong had, you said you had like a harder time picking your number one game, right?
Yeah.
And then as you got later on your list, that's where you started to care a lot less. I had the opposite problem.
Oh.
I had one game that stood so far above them all that I had a hard time filling out the rest of my list. This game was so good, it actually changed the way I walked. That's right. It had an effect on my gait. I'm talking about Baldur's Gate 3. Thank you. I could gush about this game for literal hours. It's like a genre defining game for me in terms of like every game nowadays has to have some kind of RPG elements in it. You know what I mean? And this game came in and just fucking threw it down on the table and was like, this is what an RPG is. Everybody take notes. Incredible story, voice acting, performances. The fact that like the characters actually have facial animations that aren't just like blank faces, and that almost all the lines of dialogue are like voice acted really well. It unlocked this part of my brain where I was like, oh yeah, remember when games used to do this? When like, you know, like they used to put effort into like, I've played a lot of games this year where characters just blankly stare at you when they're conveying, you know, important information.
Bethesda games, yeah.
Yes, we'll talk about that one later probably. Might have to add a dishonorable mention section. But even the fact that like, I guess there's a bit of voice acting in Tears of the Kingdom, right? Which I enjoyed. I liked hearing that kind of
in the
stuff.
cutscenes. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so this game just felt so
Angus,
fresh.
What kind of game is it for the people who like live under a rock and haven't heard of this game?
They don't know what Baldur's Gate 3 is?
Yeah.
Well, Baldur's Gate 3 is essentially Dungeons and Dragons, effectively translated into a video game, I would say. Someone who's played role-playing games for like 10 plus years now. It's probably the best adaptation of a tabletop role-playing game to video game, I would say. So it's, you know, turn-based strategy, like combat. We've got, you know, puzzle solving, exploration. We've got dialogue that actually matters. You know what I mean? Like dialogue decisions that actually impact the story in a real way.
Not like real life.
Not like real life where you can say anything.
Yeah, and you just get away with whatever you want.
It's one of those things I pay attention to in a lot of games where I'm like, I'll be like, oh, I could say this thing, and then I'll say something. Like even like I love Persona 5, but like the choices you make in dialogue have no outcome on this. They don't affect the story. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. No, that's a good point. But like moment to moment, they don't really do anything. But you're right. Besides the ones that are like, oh,
let me have sex with my teacher. Yeah.
Hey, first person I romanced.
Right there with you.
In real life too, I guess.
Yeah. That was less cool. That was less chill.
Very less cool.
But anyway, yeah, no, Baldur's Gate 3 I think is a phenomenal game. I would say the last thing that I really want to hit there is I played it on PC, I played it on PlayStation. Right now I have a co-op game going with my wife. We're the two of us, we're playing it on our PlayStations together, and it's maybe one of the best cooperative game experiences I've ever had in my entire life.
You mean? Or
well, we started couch co-op. We both played on her PlayStation, but then I decided I wanted it on my PlayStation as well. So I bought a second copy of it for my PlayStation, and we have both our TVs in the living room. So we sit and we log in and play with each other online, but we're in the same room. But like the game has had like boss fights and stuff like that where we feel super creative because we figured out like a weakness or a mechanic that they didn't say. There wasn't like a head on my belt being like, let me tell you how to solve this problem immediately, you know? And we also had like, we've had truly like in Matthew might be able to speak to this, the person I've played 10 years of role-playing games with, is there are these moments that come up in your games that like live on, you know? And Sarah, my wife, and I playing this, there are decisions and outcomes we've had in these little sessions when we sit down to play for a couple hours that I'll remember for a very long time. So yeah, no, it's remarkable game. And the last thing I wanted to say too is I really want to spotlight Larian's community and the work they did to this game was in early access for a really long time. I bought into it actually a couple of years ago in early access. First time I played it, it was a bit of a mess, but they really, really polished it up before release. It's so ready to go. You know, like I ran into a couple issues, but nothing like some other games this year. You know what I mean? But anyway, I'm done gushing about this
ongoing
game.
Support for this game is one of the best I've seen in video games
Truly.
in forever. It's just so crazy how this game blew up from, it truly was the underdog this year, right? It kind of came out of nowhere, quote unquote, and nobody expected it to, like, it won Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Like that's how big it became. Yeah, what a remarkable achievement in video games. Really, really cool. I have like a lot of nitpicky things I would say about it, but Ethan and Matthew, you've played it as well, I assume.
Yeah, I played the hell out of that game.
Yeah,
I should say I haven't beaten it yet, but I'm very far into it. Like my wife and I were like well into the second act. We've just been doing like everything we possibly can. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Ethan, you've been playing it.
Yeah, I'm looking at my Steam page right now. I played 238 hours of this game.
Hell yeah.
It gripped me like no game has in a long time, honestly. Like Elden Ring was fantastic last year. Breath of the Wild was fantastic too. I think this game trumps it for me in terms of like how my life was engulfed by this game or my free time, really. I have nothing but good things to say about this game.
Did you play it alone, Ethan, or?
I did, yes. There was no co-op experience, and I did play with controller and mouse and keyboard too with this.
I want to hear Matthew's thoughts in a second, but I'm curious, Ethan, do you play a lot of role-playing? Like, do you play tabletop games like in real life?
I mean, I play D&D a decent amount. I wouldn't say I haven't been playing it as long as Matthew and Angus, but I absolutely agree with that sentiment that it is the closest you could get to playing D&D in a video game.
It does a pretty good job at getting people through the door. I think there are definitely lots of people who would find it kind of, I wouldn't say impenetrable because it's not impossible, but it is heavy. There is a lot of systems that are going on in Baldur's Gate 3, and I can see it being a turnoff to some because it is a big investment to put your time into something that is so systems heavy. Unless,
I wouldn't classify it as like a cozy game. There are systems that you need to learn, but very rewarding once you figure them out.
Sure. Matthew, you have stuff to say about this game?
I echo what both Ethan and Angus have said about this game being an amazing achievement for game development. Certainly the best Dungeons & Dragons game I've ever played. My issue with the game, I brought this up in previous episodes. I'll bring it up again now. This game is not parent-friendly. And I'll highlight one event that occurred to me. So I was midway through Act 1. I had done like a whole bunch of stuff. I had just started my session for that evening. I was like mucking about in the wilderness, picking up items, having a great old time. I ran into a cutscene. I met this very important person. He had a proposition for me. I was intrigued by his proposition. I went through a whole dialogue tree about this proposition. I emerged from the cutscene and continued on my quest. I overcame an obstacle even. And then I was confronted by some gnolls who attacked me, and I was vastly underleveled for, and they beat me up immediately. And I was bumped back to my last autosave from an hour and a half ago. That entire dialogue tree I went through was undone. The obstacle I overcame was undone. The cool loot I had found was undone. And I was done for the evening. Like I had kids to look after at 6 a.m. the following morning. And I had similar run-ins again and again in that game. As much as I love it, as much as I really want to play that game, every time I go to do it and I get one of those like big setbacks, it totally kills my momentum. My suggestion to you all, don't be like me, be smart. Thumb the F5 key, autosave like constantly. Every time you move about the map, F5,
Or quick save and play. Like I have to quick save constantly on PlayStation because it's just, Yeah, I face that as well. Last thing I'll say about Baldur's Gate, because I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it, but I do think it's insane. People won't remember this, but I do. This was a Google Stadia exclusive. Baldur's
Was
Gate
it really?
3.
Was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This was a Google Stadia exclusive.
That's fascinating.
And Google Stadia lasted a year, maybe.
Oh, I'm so glad.
It went down. So isn't that insane to think about?
That would have sold some Stadia units.
Or killed the game.
Or killed the game. Yeah.
Or killed the
Fair.
game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no way. Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that nuts?
That's wild.
Anyways.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about.
How about we go, Matthew? What do you have as your first nomination?
Well, my selection might surprise you all too. That's right. I'm talking about Remnant 2.
Remnant 2.
That literally could have been any sequel.
Yeah. Yes.
Not my fault.
I like how you use the two-part to wordplay with, but not Remnant.
So, for those who don't know me, I love Souls-like games. Remnant 2 is the sort of quintessential Souls-like that you can play. It's a third-person shooter, but it has all the usual trappings that you'd expect from a Souls-like. It's got a bonfire system, it's got iframe dodging, it's got punishing combat that rewards you for understanding what you're doing, a very deep story that you sort of find by picking at threads through reading item descriptions and interacting with NPCs. Where it deviates a bit from the Souls-like genre is that it has a class-based system with abilities that you can activate. And of course, because it's got guns, the way you load out your combat items is very different. But nonetheless, if you like Souls-like games and you want to play a shooter, lines up with it perfectly. The reason why it's my favorite game is that, to start, Remnant from the Ashes, the first game, it's one of my favorite games of all time. Remnant 2 improves on it in just about every single way you could improve on a game. The biggest change is the class system that I mentioned earlier. So when you start the game, you pick what's called an archetype that comes with some passive traits and an activatable ability. And then over the course of the game, you actually can equip two of them simultaneously. And then you unlock multiple archetypes over the course of the game that you can mix and match to create different classes. And then when you combine that with the different guns and melee weapons available in the game, and then combine those guns and melee weapons with their own passive modifiers and activatable abilities, you just get a very deep combat system that allows you to create some really, really cool builds that just each one plays wildly different. Like there's people online now that are messing about with like invincible builds where you're just like literally unkillable as long as you're doing a certain series of game actions. And it's not a bug. It's just like, yeah, we did the math and this is how it works. And I love that kind of exploration, that kind of finding the fun just based on what the devs give you. The other cool part of the game is how the story plays out. Remnant plays out by going through a series of biomes, right? So you start off on Earth, and then from there you get sort of catapulted into different worlds to explore and enemies to fight. But the reason why it's so interesting, and Angus, myself, and some friends, we did a LAN party the night this game came out. I started up my game, and I got thrust into a world straight out of Bloodborne. Angus started up his campaign and got thrust into like a sci-fi story. And then my friends across the room from us started up their campaigns and were transported into like a mystical fairy realm. We had all started the game at the same time. This is just how the game works, is that it's just a random progression of worlds and events. But that's maybe its most intriguing part, is that you have to play the game multiple times to experience all there is to it. And I did a speed run recently just for the hay of it. It takes like 2 hours to run through the game beginning to finish if you don't engage with any of the side activities. But that's the cool part. It's like, okay, I've already seen that side activity. I'm not going to do it. I don't care about it. I'm going to move on to the next thing. And then, oh, I haven't done this one yet. I'll do that and then move on to the final boss and then move on to the next world to see what I get there. Overall, it's just like a super bingeable game. You can keep playing it over and over. Drop in co-op with people online is always fun and rewarding. You're never really missing out on anything. And yeah, I can't get enough of it. Also had its first DLC release recently, and it was bomb. It was great.
I've heard nothing but good things about this game. Is it much more fun to play with people compared to by yourself?
I will say that there are times where you'll be like, okay, this is obviously a challenge that is meant to be approached with multiple players. Doesn't mean you won't be able to do it by yourself, but there are just things where it's like, okay, this was obviously designed with a 3-player group in mind.
Okay.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll jump in there too, I love this game as well. I thought it was a very fun time to play. I didn't like Matthew and our friends who played it, they really stuck with it after that initial LAN party. I took a bit of a break from it. Then when I came back to it, they had already all beaten it. So, there was a bit of a double-edged sword effect there where like when we played together the next time, there wasn't really that sense of discovery for me because everyone knew, even though it's random, which side quest drops which items, how to solve which puzzles, how to beat which bosses. And so with a run of bad luck, I ended up watching people play it a bit more than actually playing it myself. But it is a really fun time. I love the way the archetype combo system works. It's a cool world, and the gunplay is really tight. It's great on mouse and keyboard. I would definitely prefer to play it, I think, on PC over console, but I can't imagine it's probably just as good on console. Yeah, it's a good time. And it's got a good aesthetic that I don't think a lot of games, there's an art to making a biome that's gray brown and still have it look kind of cool. You know what I mean, Matthew? Where like even like, oh, this is a city that's ruined, it still like looks pretty good. And even though I've played 50 games that all take place in 50 different ruined cities that all start to just blend together, I really appreciate the creature design, the enemy design, the environments and stuff like that. There's a lot of really fun stuff to love in Remnant for sure.
Cool.
Artistic direction is strong in that
Top
game.
notch. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you liked it too, Angus. I knew Matthew would like that one. Ethan, what do you got as your first nomination?
Just going off of like visual flair and style from bleak and gray and browns, I want to take us to a place of pure joy, of bright and vibrant color. I don't want to rush to it too quickly, but I want to nominate Hi-Fi Rush. So this game kind of shadow dropped.
It did
in January. Like this was the first game I played this year, and after I finished it, I was like, not even after I finished it, I was like a quarter of the way through the game. Like this is easy top 5 for me. Like it was so fun. It is a stylish action game made by the same people who made The Evil Within, which is a survival horror game. And it's just a complete like 180 for that studio. But they came away with this fantastic action game. And like I said, stylish action, but they did a really, really inventive twist to it, and that it's a rhythm game as well. And I think it pairs perfectly for a stylish action game. Because whenever you're playing like DMC or these kinds of games, you're hitting the buttons to like duh, 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 and then duh, 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 kind of like to get the flow of the combos while you're fighting all the enemies. I thought it was a genius way to approach this game. So you play as this character named Chai, who is like Goku level dumb protagonist. He just wants to rock. That's all he wants to do. But then he like ends up, it's like a futuristic sort of society, and he ends up with like a robotic arm and like an iPod in his chest, and he starts, there's like something that goes on. He starts like the whole world starts just like jamming to his heartbeat and stuff like that. And I don't know. And you go on a crazy adventure with some of your companions to stop the evil Vandalay company from wreaking havoc in the city and stuff. It's just so fantastic. Like I said, it's super vibrant. It's colorful. The action is great. And I know a lot of people might be kind of intimidated to say that it is a rhythm game, and you know, some people don't have rhythm, but
right here, buddy. That's me.
But there is so many visual cues in this game to help you with that. They have a floating kind of like cat called 808 that helps the visually like pulses to the beat to help you stay on time. There's also tons of environmental cues. Like we're talking steam coming out of like grates in the ground, or just like paintings on the wall, like jumping off a little bit in time with the beat. And you don't have to play the game on the beat. You can just button mash and you can still get through the game. You just get benefits and kind of higher combos and higher combo scores if you do stay on beat. Like your dash, which is like an air dash, you can do it twice. But if you do it to the beat, you're actually able to get a third dash in.
That's very cool.
So you kind of, there's some incentive there to actually try and stay on beat and stuff. So yeah, this game is fantastic.
This was like the one like Microsoft exclusive that I was really like, oh, I wish I had.
Is this like an exclusive?
It was on Game Pass. You can probably get it on Steam, but I was like, wow, that's a cool shadow drop, first of all. And I love a stylish action game, and I love a rhythm game. So this seems up my alley. Hopefully I can play it someday. But yeah, that's awesome. Let's go into round 2.
Round 2.
Two. There we go. I would like to change the 2 into Wahoo. because I want to talk about a wonderful game called Super Mario Wonder. And I realize that's my second Switch game, but you know what? This year for the Nintendo Switch, being on like pretty old like hardware at this point, they fucking brought it this year. I'm super impressed with their output this year. Super Mario Wonder is the latest Mario game. It is a 2D side scroller game. They haven't had like a 2D side scroller since, I don't know, New Super Mario Brothers. There was Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, which is one of my favorite Mario games too, but that's a specific game where it's 2D and then a 3D plane and whatever. This is specifically a 2D side scroller. You're going left to right, up and down. Like that's where you're going. So when the game first came out, I loved its initial style. It's a very stylish game. You're going to look at it right away and you're like, wow, there's some new animation on Mario. There's new power-ups like the elephant stuff. There's new like music and sound design going on. Like if you're doing a butt stomp, they like recorded people like, I don't know, doing a drum roll before you hit the ground kind of thing. So it just has a bit more of a flair going on. And the whole wonder part of it is the big mechanic in this game is wonder seeds. So whenever you go through a level, there is a unique wonder seed for every level in the game. Pretty much every level in the game, which it seems like it would happen every few levels, but it's literally every level. So when you hit this wonder seed and get it, the level changes and it changes into a unique instance for sometimes it's literally like 10 seconds worth of something silly, or it can be this huge thing that like overhauls the level where, like, for example, if it's an underwater level, it could make the water be in the sky. And in the bottom, there's no more water. There could be instances where it becomes like a top-down kind of look, like Contra looking kind of thing going on. They have a lot of fun with the Wonder Seeds aspect of it, and I think it's really, really cool. Because it's a Mario game, of course, it's very tight in terms of platformer. That's not a surprise to anyone. But if you remember the new Super Mario Brothers games, people who played those ones on the Wii and the Wii U, those ones aren't remembered quite fondly these days because it's kind of forgettable. It was like they play okay, but it was just a bit, I don't know, safe. This seems to be the next real evolution in 2D Mario games. And they have a system called the badge system, which you get badges throughout the game and you equip one badge. The badges do all sorts of different things and give you different abilities that you can use in the level. Like you can hit R to make your hat turn into a parachute. Your jumps might be higher, for example. You can be invisible. You can do like the twirly jump, or you can do like a double jump on the wall kind of thing. And so you get to like customize your experience on how you want to play the level. But all that said, like when I was playing through the first few, I would say the first couple worlds of this game, I was like, yeah, this game's solid. It's a good 2D Mario game. And that's kind of where I left it. I was very like happy about it, but it didn't wow me the way I wanted it to until the secret like weapon in this game is surprisingly the online in Super Mario Wonder. And that is when the game turned from like a good game into a great innovative game, because what happens in the online mode, which I can't believe I'm saying for a Nintendo game and a Mario game at that, is because it implements Dark Souls like elements and it implements
You've got my interest.
And it implements journey like elements. And the way I mean by that is the way you communicate with other players. So when you turn online, what you're going to see is ghosts of other players in real time playing the same level as you. They cannot like bump into you or do any of that shit. What they can do instead is drop down something called a standee. It's like a wooden stand that you can plop at any time. You can buy some at the shop, and there's a bunch of them in the game. They all do the same thing. But when you plop it down, essentially it becomes a mark that when someone dies, if they go to that standee, as long as it's not yours, or like if I can't go to my own standee, but other people can come to mine and it'll res them, for example. It'll bring you back to life and you get like a little points counter to say how many times you've helped other people in the game. But what I think about the journey and Dark Souls elements of it is that you're communicating with people without using real language and words. Like there's a few 4 emotes going on and there's always secret flowers, wonder seeds throughout the level. And the game has like a lot of hidden secrets. So there's plenty of times where I'm like, man, I don't really know where the hidden wonder seed in this level is, but I'll see a ghost or I'll see a standee that's like floating in the air or something like that, or going like underneath the level. And I'm like, well, how the fuck did they get it down there? And because of that cue, I'm able to go and find the wonder seed, or like in real time, I'm playing the same level with someone else and we're kind of helping each other through these levels. And there's this communication and magic that happens where you're just spamming the happy emote because you both finish the level at the same time. And that was like one of the most like pleasant experiences that I had all year. I had a big grin on my face because, yeah, the powers are really good. The wonder seeds are really good in this game. The platforming is really tight. The levels are very inventive. And it's Mario, for God's sake. Of course, it's going to be some level of good. But the fact that they were able to seamlessly put in this online ghost mode that made me really care about the people that are also playing this level was very impressive to me.
Tuong, I have excellent news for you. You should play Death Stranding. That's like the whole game is helping each other.
But Death Stranding is like 30 hours and has cutscenes in between.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Hey, you know.
Yeah.
Also wasn't released in 2023.
That's
true.
Long rant done, but
that's awesome.
Yeah,
man.
I'll have more to say later. I know, Ethan, you played a little bit of it. I'm curious of your opinions after, but I guess at this point we should keep the train moving, and we'll talk about these games more in depth after. So, Angus, what do you have as your second nomination?
This is so tough. Because I have 4 picks, and I was gonna see how other people, picked stuff. It's tough.
Yeah. That's the podcast, man. We make the hard decisions.
No, I know. And it pains me to my core. My Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. This is a game that so my next nomination, it's a tough one, but it's an amazing game. Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. When I saw that this game was coming out, like the year after Elden Ring, I was like, oh, okay. I did okay.
Too. Yeah.
And I put off playing it for a while just because, I played a bunch of Elden Ring. I never ended up, I still haven't beaten Elden Ring. I'm very close to the end. But, I wanted a break from software games. But then when this game came out, people were saying, they're like, hey, just a heads up, this is not like other From Software games. Like, this is not like Elden Ring. It's like other Armored Core games, but it's not like Elden Ring. It's not like Dark Souls. And so I waited. And then on Christmas, I started playing it. I bought it and I started playing it. And holy shit, this game is so fucking fun. I love this game. I don't know. There's this thing where like in From Software games, which I'm very bad at them. I'm not good at them. I constantly feel like I'm playing them wrong. I'll just be constantly dodging. I don't really feel like learning how to parry, all that stuff. And I'll come up against a boss. And I'll talk to my friends about it and be like, I'm stuck on this boss. And what they'll suggest is, and this is no fault of my friends. Oh, Matthew's laughing.
Will they just say, get good at you? Or
well, that's what Matthew says. Matthew would be like, have you tried not getting hit? But then like I talk to some other friends and they'll be like, oh, you should do this whole other build that's like totally different. And I would require me to respec all my points and everything like that. When I come up against a boss in Armored Core 6, I don't feel like I need to rebuild my entire character. It doesn't feel like everything I've done up into this point was wrong. It just feels like, oh, I need to equip different tools to deal with this foe. And that's like the bosses. It's not like, oh, if you're up against this boss, you need to build these exact like 5 parts and you'll be good to go. It's way more malleable. I feel like I still get to play it my way. And when I overcome one of these tough fights, it's very rewarding. The first boss in the game took me like 6 or 7 tries. It's the first level. You haven't gotten to customize your mech. You haven't even done a tutorial yet. Like, you haven't done the training missions yet. They've given you a very brief tutorial, and then they throw this helicopter at you, this giant gunship. And it took me 6 or 7 tries, and I finally beat it. And out of curiosity, I looked up in the trophies. I was like, oh, cool, you get a trophy when you do it. What percentage of players have this trophy? And it was only 90%. That means there's 10% of people who started playing Fires of Rubicon but didn't beat the first boss. And I was like, oh, okay. It just seems like that's like the first trophy of most games is a gimme. You get it for turning the game on, basically. That second level, though, once I got to buy like one item, like a second shoulder-mounted rocket launcher, I felt like a fucking god. in that second level, the mechs you're fighting, the scrubs, they're like trash cans compared to you. It's so empowering. And then you come up against someone who's like you, and you're like, oh, hang on, I actually have to like buckle down and learn some moves and stuff like that. So it really straddles this line between like power fantasy and great struggle that you have to overcome. Whereas like in a Dark Souls game or a Souls-like game, I never get that power fantasy part of it. Like it's still satisfying to get by something, but I'm never like walking around in Elden Ring and I'm like, I'm a fucking god. I'm walking around in Elden Ring of being like, I feel mildly safe, but I have to be on edge because something could jump out and get me. I can't get too comfortable. Anyway, that is to say, I absolutely adore this game, and I was playing it right before we came on, and I'm butting heads with one of the hard bosses in the last chapter, and I cannot wait to figure out how to beat this guy. So,
It looks really fun, Angus. That is one of the games I was very sad to have missed this year.
Tuong, you played Final Fantasy 15, right? Or 16?
16, yes.
Okay. It's like if all the Ifrit parts were the entire game.
Amazing.
So you know the best part of Final Fantasy 16, the thing that the 20 seconds that they give you, and then they put 5 to 6 hours between each time you get to do it. That's every level. That's the entire game of
very cool.
I'm gonna say it. Final Fantasy 16 should have just been Armored Core.
Whoa. I might nominate it.
Definitely not
Who
nominating
knows? I might nominate it. You don't know.
No, because I know we talked about
I played that entire game.
True.
It's on
Fair
my,
enough.
you know what? Because I ran out of games, it is on my top 10 list. So
Is it really? Oh,
at number 10.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's fair. Anyway,
that's awesome.
I cede the floor.
I really enjoyed my time with Armored Core 6. As Angus pointed out, you do run into like these boss fights where you sort of start butting your head. The build that was working for you for so long no longer works, and now you have to sort of reevaluate your strategy. The problem is that depending on how much you have to rejig your build, you are effectively playing a whole new game. There are some mech bases that fundamentally change the systems you're playing with. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do enjoy like learning the puzzle involved in that new build, but that is probably its most daunting part, where it's like, man, I just need more armor, but the heaviest armor I can get involves me to learn how to drift. And then you're like, now you're playing like Need for Speed Tokyo Drift while at the same time playing Gundam Wing. So you know there's a curve to the game. There's a learning curve to the game.
Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
No Need for
Thank
Speed
you.
Tokyo Drift.
What you need is the reverse jointed legs, the little skinny ones or the medium sized ones, and then you're good.
Wow.
I like jumping. That's my move.
Love a mech thing. I'm sad I missed it. I was waiting for a sale, but it never went on sale. Still hasn't gone on sale once since it came out.
I hope we get another Armored Core before. I hope they give the Souls games a long break.
They won't.
Just I don't know. I think they might.
We're getting
We'll
DLC
see.
like for Elden Ring really soon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Elden Ring DLC is one thing, but like I think their next full-on game should be another Armored Core game. Maybe I don't know. That's just me though.
Matthew has a very sad face. Let's turn that frown upside down because you're going to nominate your second nomination.
Oh boy, I'm actually really wishy-washy on my second nom here because
It's
that
tough.
kind of paints me into a box for my last one.
We
I'm
might
gonna
say your
do
other
it here.
ones. We might say your other ones in between.
It's possible. I doubt it. I play some weird fucking games. This game is liable to give you a lot of trauma. That's right. It's Barrow trauma.
Oh,
Barrow trauma?
I've never heard of this game.
Neither have I.
you guys should Google this game.
So this game is a trip. Right off the bat, you can play it alone, but the game shines when you have like a group of 3, if not more. You can like play on a server of 64 people if you really want to. But the idea is that you are a member of a submarine crew. Your job is to pilot your submarine through the ocean moon of Europa and do mercenary jobs for the established colonies of this ocean moon. And those mercenary jobs can be as benign as, hey, transport these goods and these people from location A to location B. Or it can be like, hey, there's like a sea monster fucking our shit up. Can you go kill it? And sometimes you go on a journey to do job A, and along the way you find out that really the job was survival and you didn't even realize it. It's just one of those games where the fun is found midway through what you thought you were going to be doing. Actually, Angus and I think it was recently, in relation to the episode that we're currently recording, last weekend we did a LAN party for this game. And overall, that was a pretty tame session. Like, we didn't have any crazy twists or turns, but there was a point where we went out to go kill a group of sea monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And then midway through that hunt, we were besieged upon by sea monsters. And they like punctured a hole in the hull of our submarine. We sank to the bottom of like the ocean floor. We were trying to fight off these monsters who had gotten into the ship while simultaneously trying to repair our system so we didn't drown and die from the crushing pressure of the ocean. And we got our feet under us. We took care of the problem, and he was like, "Great, now we can go home." We're like, "No, that wasn't the mission.
Those weren't the mud raptors we were supposed to kill. Those were incidental mud raptors."
So we had to go and do that exact same thing again. But the beautiful part of it is, as we kept playing it, we kind of like learned how to operate as a unit.
Mm-hmm.
And the first batch of mud raptors fucked us up, but by the fifth batch of mud raptors, we were like, all right, bogeys 2:00 inbound. All right, I'm gonna be starting to drift backwards here. All right, deploying battery backup for additional power. Like, it was just
it's almost like Star Trek. You know what I mean? In that, like, Matthew was our captain, I was the ship's doctor / gunner. We had a security officer whenever we had people on the ship that we were transporting. And then we had a mechanic and an engineer constantly fixing this ship that's springing leaks everywhere. It's a very, like, I feel like we haven't painted a picture. It's like a 2D game. The graphics are fairly minimal. It's like an indie game, but like, because it's not photorealistic, a lot of the fun gameplay gets to, it's that sweet spot that indie games live and die in. Like, it's a fun concept executed very in a very fun way.
It's got mod support out the wazoo. Like, there are whole mod packs that people consider to be integral to playing the game if you really get into it. We're not quite there yet, but I've read about it online. Truly, you can change the game to however you want to play it. There's just so much wild stuff that comes up.
Oh,
cool.
It's a fun one. Like, truly, like, kind of what I was saying about like Baldur's Gate 3, where you get these moments, this like organic gaming moment that I'm going to remember for a long time. Like, I not knowing, like, the first time I was playing Doctor, not knowing what to do, I go up to a guy who's collapsed. And because we were playing from home, we were playing just with in-game mics. One of our crew members just stopped talking to us. And we're like, where is Alex? What's going on with Alex? So I go to check where he was. He's unconscious. He's dying. And I go to heal him, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. What do I give him? And
You're
there's a button.
Doctor, if you don't know what to
Exactly.
do.
and there's a button that is like chest compressions. So I start doing chest compressions on him, and I can see his health bar slowly start to come back. So I'm shouting like, "Live, damn it, live!" And I got so in the moment, and we saved him. And as soon as he regained consciousness, we were able to hear him again over the mic.
That is
and it was
cool.
like, it's
cool.
just, there's a lot of really cool stuff like that. And then you'll get a thing where it's like, oh, you just have to transport these clowns to 2 bases over, and there'll be clowns on your ship, but the clowns might not be what they claim to be. You know what I mean? There might be something fishy going on. That kind of thing.
Had to transport some cultists, and it was like, they were up front. It was like, hey, you need to transport these cultists, but they may try to do their cult things while on your ship, so be on top of that. And then, sure enough, like, we were beset upon by monsters from the ocean, and as we were dealing with that, our friend Michael's like, "Hey, we can't go in the gun room anymore."
We're like,
one
why?
of the cultists turned into a monster.
Yeah.
So, like, we're trying to deal with this problem outside the ship. We had to lock up a whole portion of the inside of our ship,
and then we lined up, the two of us that had guns. We're like, okay, open the door to let the monster out. Once we had dealt with all the problems, it's a great.
Then one of our
sounds like
ship members went insane. It was good.
It sounds like a cool co-op survival experience.
It's a great multiplayer experience.
I was looking at the screen. I was actually looking at when the game came out, because first of all, I just typed it in and it said June 5th, 2019, but it had the official release in 2023. So there you go. There you go, people.
Technicality.
Someone out there is just like, actually, Barrel Trauma came out in 2019. No.
And to that person, we say, fuck you.
That's right.
I was channeling Leslie there for a bit.
No, that was good. I said fuck you at the beginning of the show.
Oh, did you?
But
Oh.
I didn't say it in that way. So I'm glad someone did it in that way.
Good.
Yeah, someone who put a little like mustard in the delivery.
Oh, yeah.
Ethan, what do you have as your second nomination?
I'm going to just bear with me for a second. So Matthew had 2, but how about we add a +4 to that?
Ooh.
And a Anybody knows what that adds up to?
Armored Core 6.
Yeah, Fires of Rubicon.
You know what? You realize there are 2 6 games this year.
Oh,
What's the other
Street
6
Fighter?
games?
This is Street Fighter 6. So being one of the few people who play fighting games on the planet, I was very much anticipating this game after, me gushing about really getting into fighting games with Guilty Gear Strive. It just like a whole slew of games were opened up to me. So I was really hotly anticipating Street Fighter 6. I was definitely not disappointed. It is definitely not like Guilty Gear, so I really had to change how I play fighting games because I was used to that. But this one is fantastic. It's a fantastic entry. It's completely new. It's the continuation of like the Street Fighter story, I guess.
Since
with the
2,
new,
I think a sequel to 2. I think is that the latest one? I don't know.
Something.
It's so
it's something
fucking
like
complicated.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
So yeah, it's just Street Fighter. This is really, if you don't know Street Fighter, like that one guy who's probably tuning in for this podcast for the first time, Street Fighter is a 2D fighting game. It's very slow paced. It's very methodical. It's a huge kind of monolith of the fighting game genre. It's been around for a long time, and this is the 6th one of them. The thing that they really try to do to differentiate this from the other ones is using the drive system. So this is like, along with your health bar, you have another meter to kind of manage. And this is what gives you access to different mechanics, the new mechanics in the game called drive impact, drive rush, drive parry. And these kind of elevate the typical strike throw, punchy gameplay and add another level of depth to your game. It's, like I said, it's very slow and methodical, but that's what really, it's really fun in that way. It's a lot easier to pick up than Guilty Gear, I would say. It's a lot less fast-paced. It has a lot of characters that you'd recognize, like Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Blanca, Zangief. So if there's no... Yeah, Cammy, of course. How could you forget?
Can't forget her.
For listeners who can't see it, Tuong is dressed in very accurate Cammy cosplay.
Yeah, very tight clothing.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And very revealing of my glutes. Very.
Yeah, you've got the pose down.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really solid fighting game. Not only is a lot of the time fighting games don't really have a lot of like single player components to them, so it's like if you don't like the fighting, then it's like this game isn't going to do anything for you. So they changed that a little bit here by adding sort of like a Yakuza light-esque single player story to this. I don't really know if it's a story or not, but you're able to explore in like an open world and kind of do jobs for the characters in Street Fighter. Best thing you can do in that game is if you want to start a fight, you can literally start a fight with anyone in this open world. Just go up and fucking sock them in the face, and then
an old lady on the street.
Yeah,
exactly.
I saw that footage too. Yeah,
it's great.
It's bopping old ladies.
Yeah, it's really good that way. You can also kind of build. I thought this part was really cool. You could build custom fighters. So you have an avatar that you can get dropped into like a battle hub lobby where you can run around, go on arcade cabinets, challenge people, get costumes and all that jazz. But you could also make a custom fighter and pull in all of the moves from everyone in the cast to make, your own Street Fighter. And then it can go into the battle hub and fight other people's unique Street Fighter characters. So that's a really cool sort of addition. And I kind of wish they leaned into that a little bit more and just see what kind of like really fucking cheap shit people can make. Cool. Yeah, overall solid fighting game.
I played a bit of it, the beta when it came out, and I'm really into the single player aspect of it because, I'm just not very good at online like fighters. It's a gorgeous game. I love the aesthetic. I love the spray paint kind of style they gave it.
Get to see Ryu's feet. If you're a foot guy.
Controversial statement. I think the redesign of Ryu does not look good, but that's
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
You don't like his facial hair?
No, I just don't like I don't know. The facial hair is
very
fine.
wide.
Yeah, and just like I don't know. I feel like the robes just feel kind of lazy, just like the robe over one shoulder. I don't know. I'm sure there's some
Gears
very
of War-esque
cultural
Unreal Engine 3 level Ryu.
Yeah. But then like you see like I forget all the characters' names. Some of the new characters look phenomenal,
Yep.
And so it's one of those ones that's I keep meaning to revisit since the beta, but just haven't had the time for. But it's a jaw-dropping game.
I played some of it as well. I don't have much to say about it because I only played it when a friend was over and like, I have Street Fighter 6 because Ethan bought Street Fighter. You want to give it a shot? Because we game share. And I thought it was pretty fun for someone who was kind of into fighting games when Street Fighter 4 came out. But like, it takes so long to like learn systems in fighting games, which is why
course.
it's a cool thing with current day fighting games, finding ways to, all right, if you want
Yeah.
like the baby mode, let's say, quote unquote.
Well, the
then-
modern controls
yeah,
that they do.
they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, instead of doing quarter circle, this, that.
Hadouken
memorize-
is now 2 buttons. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that's much more accessible for someone who just wants to jump in. And I can play someone like Ethan who might be doing like the full combos on the controller, and I might not be able to pull off the same things as he can, but I can do pretty good enough, and it's still fun for both players. So I like that.
That's a really good point. Yeah, the technical controls versus the modern controls versus even the assisted controls, which is you just hold a button, mash a button, and it just does combos for you. But
Yeah.
the modern and the technical, even in like the highest level, there are people who are just using the straight, simple inputs and modern inputs, and they're doing really well for themselves. Like, it's super great.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
made it a lot more accessible. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well,
And those,
go ahead.
I'll say, sorry, one more thing that I'll just say soapbox, technical inputs are stupid. I don't know why they have them in fighting games. It's dumb. Anyway,
It's for the
sorry,
people who
Tuong.
want to fucking wreck their controllers and joysticks and really like get into it.
It's like the keyboard. Why is the QWET like, doesn't make sense.
Well, let's
You can blame typewriters for that.
There's actually a very good reason for that.
Let's continue
damn.
into round 3. We've been talking for a
man.
very long time, so I hope our audience is still awake. So
They've been
awake.
edging this entire time.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Awake, is that the right terminology?
Uh-huh.
Wake.
Oh.
Alan Wake 2?
Oh.
Is that the nomination? It is. Alan Wake 2 is my final nomination. This is an interesting one because I did not play Alan Wake 1. Didn't really care to be honest with you. It looked kind of cool, I guess. I only started getting to really brave enough to play like survival horror type games over the last handful of years, I would say. RE2 Remake being one of the first years that I really got into like survival horror and be like, okay, if it's done right, or Dead Space even, then I can get on top of it. Alan Wake 2 was interesting because this is a game that for a studio, Remedy, who has done famously very meta-like narrative games, kind of Twin Peaksy type of games where it's you don't really know what's going on, but if you're the type of person who likes like a supernatural story on top of some horror elements and some like weird shit going on, then this might be up your alley. But Alan Wake 2, when it was announced and dropped, people would not stop talking about it. It was one of those games that I was just like, whoa, we're talking about Alan Wake 2. Are we actually talking about that right now? Because Alan Wake 1 did not set the world on fire. It didn't. It got a remaster this year because Alan Wake 2 was coming out. But I think since Control, which was very popular to a bunch of people, not me, I didn't even like Control. I tried getting through like a few hours in and I just couldn't. So I was just like, well, Alan Wake is a different thing. People would not stop talking about it. Some people name it their game of the year. Like that's how big this game became, at least for like critics out there. So I'm like, I have to try this game. And the answer to all that after I figured it out, I finished it as well, is that I really, really liked it. I'm going to put an asterisk because I think the gameplay decisions, some of the gameplay decisions in that game, I don't jive with. I think it's very easy to get lost in that game. I think some of the like where to go next, getting lost in that game, and like just like a few mechanics that just don't feel right. Or like I played it on story mode because A, I was trying to get it done for this podcast, but B, I just found it like the enemies were sponge bullets if it wasn't on story mode. And I was still dying on story mode, which I thought was like kind of like a weird thing. Like I was just like, oh, I guess I'm just dead. And I'm dying multiple times on story mode. This is
Tongue, you can edit this part out if you want. That's incredibly embarrassing to admit.
I know. Well, there's like instances, well, there was like combat scenarios where I definitely died, but there's instances where it's like you're running away from the dark presence. It's like a scary, like, you don't know what's behind you. And I didn't know where to go. And I just died like 6-7 times in a row. And I'm like, oh my God. So those parts like took it out for me. But overall, like I think the presentation package of this game is what makes it elevated in my mind. Like it is so unlike any other game that I've seen, blending FMV, full motion video, for people who don't know. It's like using real actors for cutscenes and like implementing them. In this game, they do it cool because it's a full FMV blend where they take the character models of what they built in game, which looks amazing already. And they blended on top of the FMV people. So sometimes you're looking at stuff where you're like, oh, is that an actor doing that? Or is that the model doing that? And they play a lot with the whole FMV stuff and the presentation of it, which made me feel like it was just a really thought out world. And it's just, I've never really seen anything like that in video games, I'll be honest. So I thought it was really, and also it legitimately scared me multiple times. There's a lot of like, I would say some of them are cheap jump scares in the game. Like you're just playing through the game and then like all of a sudden, like it feels so random, like a face will just appear filling the screen, you know, like just out of nowhere. It's just like, ah! And I'm like, oh, fuck. And yeah, it's like, I got you, you fucker. You got too comfortable again. Ah! Yeah. And when I finished the game, it was interesting because I had a really good time. I got really scared and I felt like I had a full experience. And then I put when the game ended, I'm like, oh, okay. I wonder if that'll make my game of the year. But I finished that like a few weeks ago, and it's one of those games that I'm still thinking about. So that to me feels like a mark of something that tried something different I haven't seen in a video game and really stuck with me, which is why I'm ranking it so high on my personal list, because there's games that are sequels to things that we might not even talk about on this podcast that are like, oh, I've played that other version of that game and it's good, and this game is just a little bit better than that first version or whatever it is. But this feels like something new, and I really value that in a video game. So, Ethan, you played a little bit of this?
I played 8 hours. I haven't beaten it yet, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you find like that assessment of getting lost? Did you get that a little bit?
So I hear that criticism a lot. Personally, I did not.
Wow,
I played this game perfectly. I don't know what you're talking about.
Didn't die once. Hardest difficulty.
No, I'm not. Yeah, exactly. Story
I was
mode must
never
be harder
scared. Yeah. I suck at video games, guys. I don't know if you know this.
No. I was just going to say I played a little bit of Alan Wake 1 in kind of because I saw trailers for 2 and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I think it's one of those games that like I had in my Steam library, but I never really played because I got it on sale. And so I started playing it, and the story is what made me want to play more of it. The gameplay was incredibly dated for like fair enough. Like it was like a 10-year-old game. It felt like a 10-year-old game. So I'm not shocked to hear that Alan Wake 2, it's not necessarily the gameplay that's bringing you back constantly. While I'm sure it's fine, it's more like the vibe and the tone and the story, which is what was so cool about the first one.
It's very Resident Evil, the way it handles like its gameplay, like you're storing guns and whatever. Like that feels very Resident Evil, and just picking up ammo and ammo scarcity and like flashlight scarcity because you're finding batteries and stuff like that. I would say the most interesting gameplay elements is that you play as 2 characters in the game. You play as Saga Anderson and Alan Wake, and they both have
Saga. Oh, that's
Saga.
Fun.
Yeah. And you have concurrent stories that are going on, and you get to, much like a different game that might get mentioned, you get to choose who you want to play. You get to like play some of Alan Wake's story, or you can play all through it and then play Saga's story, and they like intertwine in that way. But yeah. So the gameplay mechanic for some of the game is that like you can take light away from the room. And when you take a light away from the room, that's like, let's say there's a light bulb above me and I can just take that light away, it changes the scenery around me like instantly. And so you're playing a lot with these types of puzzles where you can like put light into another room, and that will change the entire like the look and feel of that area. So it's like lots of cool puzzle solving in that way. And for specifically Alan, who's an author in this game, he's trying to write his way through the nightmare. That's his whole thing. He's a very... Yeah, it's a funny thing. This author has a lot of agency in this movie or this video game, but he is writing scenes for this horror story that it's unfolding. And he's just like, okay, well, I'm going to write this scene. This scene it's a murder story. So you'll go into his like author place and he'll write up this murder story, and that changes the entire scene around you. Or you'll be like, oh, actually, it wasn't a murder story. It was like an amusement park story. And then like you'll see it happening. He's like writing on his typewriter as like FMV's playing like on top of what's happening. And then in an instant, it changes the entire scene. And then you have to puzzle solve that way, which I think is really cool. The last thing I'll say about Alan Wake is it has a pretty neat mechanic. I think it's mostly neat because it's so instant, is that you can enter something called the Mind Place. It's kind of like Sherlock Holmes' Mind Palace kind of thing. With Saga Anderson, she's a detective cop just trying to figure out what the mystery that's going on in the town. And if you push down on the right-hand side of like the PlayStation controller on the touchpad, you instantly, like no matter where you are, like you could be like, you know, in an area that's kind of scary. You press right on the touchpad and you get transported into the mind place instantly. And from here, you can solve the mystery and like put like Polaroids on like the board to try to figure out like what to do next in the game. Yeah, it's very quick and I think it's pretty cool.
That sounds impressive.
Yeah. Let's go into your final nomination, Angus. I actually don't know what you're going to... There's between two games that I think you're going to say.
Yeah, I don't know which one of them to pick. I have to go with my gut here. God, it's such a shame because I want to nominate both of them.
Well, yeah, go with your heart.
I have to go with my heart. So
Kingdom Heart 3.
Kingdom Hearts 2.8
one
over
of
2.
One of the things this year that I've been really aware of, and I mentioned this last year, I feel like with the most recent God of War game, was it felt like a bit of a chore almost, where I'm like, I had to kind of like get in there and finish that game up. You know what I mean? I had to coax myself into playing it. And there's been a couple games this year where that's not been the case. One of them was Baldur's Gate 3. One of them is Armored Core. I can't, like, when I come home, I'll just play that. We've got all these games to play, but I'm like, I feel the urge to play this. This next game, I'm utterly shocked that it had this hold on me, but it did. This game lived in my head. It was a resident in my head. I'm talking about Resident Evil 4 remake. I can't believe I'm nominating this game, but I played. My wife and I bought a PlayStation VR, the PSVR 2. So I was playing that, and I was playing some VR games, and I was like,
you're the only other person. I know you played it at my place, and that's what made you want to buy it, but you're literally the only other person I know who has a PSVR 2. So look at us.
I know. And I have to say that if you have a VR and you like Resident Evil, you have to play this game in VR. I played the entire game in VR. I still haven't played it in third person yet. It's fucking incredible. I felt so cool, just like dropping a magazine out of my gun, slapping a new one in there, pulling the rail on it, shooting zombies, pulling my knife out, stabbing them, switching to a shotgun, bang, bang. Oh, I got to cock it, bang. Oh, I got to load new shells into it and stuff like that. And it was fucking awesome. It was great. And as a remake goes, for one of my favorite games of all time, it found a lot of ways to, I don't even want to say improve, because it's not even like that. It like the stuff that was good about Resident Evil 4, it's not like, oh, well, we have to change these because of a remake. We're just going to do them differently. So there are moments that play out slightly differently. I'm walking into this room and I'm like, oh, I remember what happens in this room. I know what happens. And then like the floor collapses and it's like, gotcha. You didn't know that was going to happen. So it's great for new players, but it's like a very lovingly made remake. Tuong, did you play it at all in VR?
I played 4 or 5 hours of it in VR.
What did you think of the VR? I loved it, but I've already said that.
So I didn't play RE7 or RE8 in VR, so I can't compare those other two.
I haven't either.
This is the third VR mode that Capcom has put out for their latest Resident Evil games that are at least in first person. Well, I guess RE4 wasn't in first person, but they wanted to do a VR mode for this because 7 and 8 were so popular. So I can't compare that part of it. The reason why I bring that up is because I don't know how different it is compared to those other ones.
Sure.
But that said, I also fucking loved it so far.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like a bunch of VR experiences that I've had this year. This is the first year that I've ever owned a VR headset or tried a VR anything. So a lot of it feels very novel. With Resident Evil 4, because it's first person and the way the camera kind of like just, you're trying to change the camera in that game constantly, you're always clicking.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, oh, is this going to give me a headache? And I was shocked to find that even though this game should give me more motion sickness, I never got it so far.
Me neither.
And
I had one part there, and they even say, they're like, hey, when you get into a vehicle, it might give you a little bit of motion sickness. So there was like a boat, a very infamous boat part in the middle of the game. And I'm like, oh yeah, a little tiny bit. But yeah, anyway.
And the way they handle the VR in this game, because it wasn't made as a first-person game, it's interesting. So, like, if you ever played RE4 Remake, you're shooting guys, and when you shoot a zombie or whatever they're called in this game, if you shoot them enough, then you can get a melee off on them. You just run up to them and hit X. In this game, it's weird because you're in first-person mode, and then you run up to them and hit X, and it zooms out, and now you see Leon kicking them in the face. So, like, you are Leon. But you're not seeing the kick happen.
I wish I
person.
could do that when I did something cool in real life.
Totally.
Oh, I go to open a door and I zoom out to a third person perspective and I push the door open.
Totally. It's
Just you pushing on a pull.
yeah. So that's a bit jarring, but I kind of find it charming because RE4 is
Corny,
kind of a
man.
very corny, in a good way game. So because it, like I don't mind that. I'm just pointing it out for people.
Yeah.
All this to say, I guess I do really like it. I think some aspects of the VR are kind of weird, like when you're using a scope in that game. I don't really like it. You're supposed to like put the scope next to your face.
Yeah, you got to bring the controller
up
Yeah.
to your face, and I never felt that no matter what I did, I couldn't get it in focus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like sometimes it's in focus and sometimes it's not. But the joy of VR, especially in a game like a zombie game, is that you are actively reloading in a VR game. So instead of hitting a button to reload, you are taking the clip out, you're grabbing one from your ammo pouch, you're putting it at the bottom of the gun, and then you're cocking it. And there's been many times when I'm in a frenzy and I'm fucking up.
And you're like, oh no,
I'm like,
yeah,
I gotta
exactly.
reload. I can't do it. And that would never
Yeah.
happen in a non-VR experience. So all that to say, I thought it was very cool. And I still do.
Cool.
And I can't wait to finish it.
Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Anyway, that's it for me. God, that was painful though. Oh,
Yeah,
my honorable mentions are going to be lit.
Don't worry. Matthew's going to say what you would have
He's
said.
not.
No, he's not. What are you going to say, Matthew?
So actually, I'm in a similar boat as you all here. I think ultimately I made the decision to give the nom to a game that actually was like a fresh experience for me. It wasn't something I'd done. I'll preface all of this by saying originally I was going to nominate Lords of the Fallen, but it's just another Souls-like. And as I was sort of mulling it over, I realized this game didn't really innovate much versus this game I am nominating. And it's going to rock your world of horror. World of Horror is the game.
Yeah.
This is my anime game nomination.
Oh, nice.
So I'm going to throw out a couple of keywords for you all here. Lovecraftian, roguelite, Junji Ito. Hopefully this is piquing your interest. Some of you are probably thinking, is that a hentai? Maybe. So
Now I know that word.
Now you're speaking my language.
this game, first of all, this game is like an atmospheric success. The audio and the visuals are immaculate. Like it sucked me in right from go.
Oh, I love this visual art style already.
Yeah, so it tries to emulate like the games of yesteryear from the old days of like an 80s ROM where you plug in like a cartridge into your box of a computer and you hear it whir up. Right down to those sound effects. It emulates all of it. And it does two things really well through the aspect of gameplay. So first of all, the actual core game that you're playing is a 5-act roguelite horror story where there's an elder god slowly exerting its influence over the world, manifesting through gameplay mechanics. And then to defeat that dark god, you have to go and investigate 5 mysteries. And those 5 mysteries are self-contained stories that have you do a thing. The scope of those mysteries is so wildly different between each one, it doesn't bear getting into them, but each one is a very interesting and unique story that has different outcomes, both based on luck and also by choices you make. Then, as you sort of progress through the game, your character changes and transforms and becomes this different thing. You've got different companions. You then eventually take the fight to the dark god itself and hopefully win. Maybe you don't. Hard to say for sure. And then it's done. Like, I think I beat my first playthrough in 2 hours. And then you do it again. And you do it again. And you do it again. The whole point being to find all the different endings to each of the individual stories that the game sets up for you, and then also, of course, to overcome the unique challenges that each dark god presents. The dark god I fought against, like the one that it always sort of sets you up against at first as you learn the game, is that like your spells don't cost as much, so you're incentivized to use them more, but there's penalties for using lots of magic. But I digress. So I ran into that one a lot, but I started delving a little bit more into some of the other gods, and some of them were just straight up punishing, where it's like, yeah, I hope you know what you're doing because you will not win otherwise. But it is truly infinitely replayable because each of the 5 stories has up to 4 different endings. To get those 4 different endings, you have to, as I said, either have good luck or make the right choices. And then with the dark gods added onto it, each playthrough is very unique and different. So that's the core game. that all of what I just sort of said there was the core game. It does one of a lot of games like oh man, I'm gonna botch this, but what's that card game we talked about? Like
Inscription.
Inscription, yeah.
Yeah, it does like what Inscription does and what other games do now, where it has like a meta narrative that you can sort of interact with. And so there's like a bit of a twist there that you can dig into. Nothing too groundbreaking, but it's still there, which was a nice little Easter egg. So overall, yeah, it was a pleasant, enjoyable experience.
I love hearing, but World of Horror was pleasant.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys have ever read Junji Ito's manga stories. They are some of my favorite manga to read. If you enjoy horror and you enjoy manga, I highly recommend you check out some of his work. Uzumaki still gives me chills to this day.
Okay.
Is that the Spiral one?
Yeah, that's the Spiral one.
That's getting an adaptation. They're making an anime or something like that, which it seems like
Netflix. There's like a compilation of some of his shorter works on Netflix that you can watch. But I truly recommend reading his stuff at like 2 a.m. When you're like tired. Like I got through college on stuff. It is spine chilling. That all said, this game emulates his art style and his narrative well. I really enjoyed it. It was good.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I'll definitely check it out. Ethan, you have the honor and the pressure to bring us home for the final nomination.
It's a pretty grand honor to have.
So
thank you for this. I'm going to continue with the anime. I'm going to nominate Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. Probably the longest name on our list.
What is it?
Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising.
I don't know if that's longer than Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon.
We'll count the characters later.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an anime fighter. It's an anime street fighter, essentially. It is the sequel to Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and Grand Blue Fantasy is like a gotcha sort of RPG game. I have no bearings of like anything in that game except the genre of it, but this is the fighting game version of it, and the second fighting game version of it, actually. It's a lot of fun. It came out December this year. So like Angus got a grip on me in December and actually made it onto my own list. We're talking about modern controls with Street Fighter 6. This is that again. It incorporates modern controls, simple controls, and the technical inputs, but it really pushes the simple inputs first. So if you are new to fighting games, you're interested in it, I've been having a blast with this game using simple inputs. It is really straightforward. It is strike throw, just kind of staggering back and forth, doing that dance like you would in Street Fighter, but it has all of the flair of an anime fighter. You're not doing crazy air dashes and crazy mix-ups and stuff like that, but you're still getting the really cinematic, cool supers and stuff like that. You're getting really awesome graphics, like projectiles, tons of spark, hit effects, hit sparks and stuff like that. Cast of characters, I think because this is the sequel to the first game, it includes all of the DLC and all the main cast from that. So I think the starting cast is 20 plus characters. So that is a big cast for a fighting game. And they're adding new ones. They've added 3 or 4 new characters to the base cast, and they have 6 character roadmap for DLC in the future. Anyway, that's not important. What's important is the actual fighting is fantastic. It feels good. It feels faster than the original Grand Blue, which was kind of my hindrance behind it. They've added new moves and a whole new sort of bravery point mechanic thing to help with crazier offense and cooler combos and stuff. It's just a lot of fun. So there's 2 things I want to highlight on. So again, I was talking about fighting games not really having a really solid single player component. This one, I think the single player in this is kind of sort of cinematic mode with some fighting in it. I don't really know, but the really cool part of this is that they put in a Fall Guys into this game. So you have mini lobby avatars of all the fighting characters, and you play Fall Guys.
Okay, that's this game. I've heard about a game that had a Fall Guys thing in it. That's funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's surprisingly fun.
That's great.
I haven't played it too much, but obviously I had to jump in just to see. And it's pretty good. It's just I think I probably like it better than the World Tour mode in Street Fighter, just because, I don't know, the Street Fighter one. Anyway, we'll get into that. But Fall Guys is great. And there's the really cool part that I've been really enjoying is I actually haven't bought the game. There's a free version of this game that you can just go download. It has one character, Gran, who is the main character, and has a weekly rotation of 3 other characters. So you can jump in any week and play Grand if you want, but then, that 1 week you'll play as Lancelot, who's the ninja guy. You'll have Anila, who shoots fucking sheep at you for some reason. Then you'll play as Siegfried, who has a He's like basically Guts from Berserk. But I think that is a really, really innovative thing about this game. And
or Siegfried from Soul Calibur.
True. Yes.
No, I played a bit of the first one that they did.
Okay.
And all I've heard about this new version is that it's like better in every way, which is what you want to hear for a sequel.
Yeah.
So it certainly caught my eye a few times because it's very stylish.
That's very cool.
They've incorporated the rollback netcode, which is like essential for fighting games. That's what made Guilty Gear Strive so popular. And every fighting game coming out now is rollback netcode. So it makes playing in North America against someone in Europe like seamless. It's sick.
That's very cool. Ethan, I'm surprised you haven't bought the game yet because I know you love fighting games so much. What's the holdup there?
Well, spend a lot of money on other things this year.
That's true. That's true. Video games are so expensive now.
I've been really helping. Like Game Pass has been nice for me, playing like tons of little small indie games and stuff like that. So this is just another thing to jump into to get a nom and end up being like probably one of my favorite games this year.
So
that's
cool.
awesome.
That's so cool. Well, how about we take a break? This is not the list of 12 that I was thinking when we started this, but honestly, pretty fucking cool list.
That's why you come to us. Yeah. We give you the real games.
Yeah. I can always count on Matthew to just throw in some weird ones in there, and you did not disappoint this year. But yes, let's take a break, and when we're back, we're going to rank and make a top 5 list of video games of 2023. We'll be back.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to live in a city full of superheroes? To literally see people fly across the sky? Crap.
What are you up to, Angus?
Oh, hey, Sal. I'm trying to record an ad for the podcast.
Heroes don't do paperwork?
Yeah, that one.
Need any help?
Yeah, actually. I'm just trying to tell people about the show, about how you and I work at a newspaper in Super City, and how we interview various citizens, from the people we call neighbors to the city's greatest heroes. But I'm having trouble wording it.
You could just use that section you recorded and put that in.
Huh. Yeah, I suppose I could. Thanks, Sal.
Don't worry about it. I'm off to the office supplies store. It got hit with a shrink ray, so everything is 50% off. Want to come?
You know what? I kind of do. Oh, for those of you hearing this, if you want to hear more about the thrilling adventures and heroics of Super City, come check out Heroes Don't Do Paperwork on the Podcavern Network. All right, let's go.
Top five.
Hello, everyone. We are back. We are ready to rank some video games. Whoa. Oh, my God. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yes. Oh, still going. That's very kind of you, audience at home. Yes, we're so excited to rank some video games, and we have a hell of a list.
Wow, this intro is longer than the Modern Warfare 3 campaign.
Okay, Christopher Judge.
See ya.
His speech was long too.
Yeah,
not even like from last year. This year it was.
This year. It's so funny because he came out and he was like he made a joke about it, and then I was like, great, now be real quick about it, and then he still went too long. He was like, Buddy loves the stage. Can you blame him? Yeah. Can you blame him? Anyways. No, I can't.
Our list of 12 games this year are Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate 3, Remnant 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Super Mario Wonder, Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. No, it's not. It's Rubicon. Barrow Trauma, Street Fighter 6 in Roman numerals, Alan Wake 2, Resident Evil 4 Remake, World of Horror, and Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising.
You mispronounced mine. It's pronounced World of Horrors.
Right out the gate, I have to say it is shocking to me that Spider-Man 2 was not mentioned by me or Angus.
The two biggest Spider-Man fans in the world. I gotta.
If you listen to last year's episode, I think we always talk about like what are we looking forward to, blah blah blah. Yeah. And Spider-Man was a huge one for you. We'll talk about this later. Like we don't have to.
All I have to say is that like playing Spider-Man 2 this time because it's like a sequel that like it improves. It didn't innovate enough for me, but it's still amazing. It's still
amazing.
like a 9 out of 10 game, and it's great, and the story's phenomenal, and it does my single favorite thing with haptic feedback on controllers for an emotional moment. If you've played it, you know what I'm talking about.
Always triggers the hug.
No, there's a character who's dying, and you feel their heartbeat slow through the controller, and it's actually very emotionally effective.
That's your favorite mechanic, is like the
no, it's
dying
my favorite
life of somebody in the
it's my favorite use of haptic feedback.
Okay.
Besides just like, oh, you're using a bow, so it's harder to pull the trigger down. You know what I mean? It's like, anyway, fuck you guys. But it just made me wish I fought harder for Spider-Man 1 the year that really should have been that was my game of the year. But like, it just made me wish I fought harder back then.
Yeah. I know we're not talking about Spider-Man, but I'll say one thing about it, because it was I ranked my list of 10 to 1, and Spider-Man ranked higher for me than Alan Wake 2. I'll say that right now. And the reason why I did Alan Wake 2 for this podcast is because I think people know what Spider-Man 2 is, but not enough normies are exposed to like Alan Wake. And I think what it does in video games is more impressive. Spider-Man is like candy, good candy. I had a great time. Its fast travel is like one of the coolest things in video games.
So impressive. You don't even need it, but it's so impressive.
But it reminds me of, well, it's better than God of War Ragnarok in terms of like first game being amazing and then the second game being like also good, but anyways.
It just barely feels like it's not DLC. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
or like an expansion. It just barely feels like a sequel. But anyway. Now let's talk about the games we actually know.
That's right.
This has been the Spider-Man corner.
But I had to bring it up because I feel like people in this call, they're like, what's happening? Are Tuong and Angus drunk?
The phones are ringing off the hook, guys.
Yeah. But let's go into doing stars. Stars for further consideration. We won't have to talk about all these games. We can say our piece and goodbye as we whittle this down. But I am curious, Angus, star and nomination that you'd like to talk about for further consideration that isn't one of your own.
I'd like to star Barrow Trauma.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I love that game.
Matthew, star one that isn't one of your own.
Ooh, I want to hear more about Super Mario Wonder.
Okay, that is starred. Ethan.
Baldur's Gate 3.
Amazing. Ooh, I'm going to star Remnant 2.
Ooh.
That's a game that I really want to get around to this year, but I didn't. Okay, so we have Super Mario Wonder starred, Baldur's Gate 3, Remnant 2, and Barrow Trauma. That's 4. Obviously, we can star more, including right now. Is there any nominations that you guys feel, including your own, that should be discussed more? We can all say, like I said, we can all say our piece and goodbyes if we want to, if we don't think it's going to make the list. But these are the ones that we think warrant further discussion.
I think Tears of the Kingdom warrants further discussion for sure.
100%. Anything else?
Okay, if I can monopolize for just a moment, I'm actually okay saying goodbye to World of Horror.
Okay.
Wow,
do you want to say your
that's
piece
generous.
now about it? You mentioned there was something you wanted to say about it.
Yeah, so World of Horror is a great atmospheric game, and it is a largely narrative experience, and that is actually where it sometimes fails to deliver. So I mentioned previously that each act of the run you do is a self-contained story. Within that self-contained story are a series of events, right? So there's the actual story you're following, but to bridge the events of that story, it runs you through events. The problem is those events are not necessarily connected to the story you're following. And at times it can be rather jarring. I remember I was like following this thread about a bunch of fishermen that had been kidnapped. And I had to go and like figure out the mystery about why these fishermen were disappearing. And one of the events was I was fighting a monster at a swimming pool at the local school. And I'm like, well, I wasn't near the school. The school has never come up to this point. I beat the monster. I got some cool rewards for it. But once I finished that event, I was back to investigating the fishermen. And that happened a lot. Was it enough for me to be like, you know what, this game's garbage and I'm putting it down? No. But for a game whose whole entity is the story it's trying to tell, to have these little beats that kept popping up where I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, removed me from the narrative it was trying to weave.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm still very interested in it.
Yeah, me too.
You should all play it. It's amazing.
Check it out, but that's a very good point.
I think it's easy to say all these games should be played. If I could jump in there, there's 2 that I'd like to star, one of my own and one of someone else's. If I only had to fight for one more of my own games, I would push a bit harder for Armored Core 6. I think that's a very fun game.
Okay.
And it's from a studio that's been doing like one specific thing for a really long time. I mean, arguably they've gone back to something they used to do, but it's just so refreshing that it's not like Dark Souls for me. So I'd love to star that one. And the other one I'd love to star is Hi-Fi Rush. Probably, if not the top of my list, very close to the top of my list of games that I really wanted to play, but just could not find the time to.
Yeah.
So I'd love to, because Hi-Fi Rush has just got such a cool style. It's anytime I see a screenshot from it, it's very clearly Hi-Fi Rush. The only thing is I've heard the music's phenomenal. I haven't listened to any of the music from it, but I'd love to hear Ethan talk more about it, basically. So
I guess
with
you
that,
probably be bad at it, right? You're not really good
I'm
at
bad.
rhythm.
I'm well. So what I've heard is, I am famously bad at rhythm. Got yelled at by both my music teachers, who just, rather than teach me how to drum or read sheet music, they'd much rather just scream at me and make me cry.
Oh, no.
But yeah, it's crazy, man. I'm still working through that. But what I've heard is that, like, and this is one thing that I've heard in a couple of reviews for it, was that like the rhythm, kind of like adhering to the rhythm, makes you perform a bit better in the game. You don't need to have perfect rhythm to play the game and enjoy it, you know? And I think Ethan even kind of touched upon that, of like, it's a bit of a bonus, you know? And I love this idea. There's been some other ones too, of like, there's like an FPS that's got a rhythm mechanic to it. So there's a lot of that's coming out. And I love that kind of blending of genres.
Pistol Whip
I think
does that in VR.
Does it?
Yes, it does.
Nice.
Very, very
Nice.
good VR game, but
Amazing.
alas, we're not talking about that. Ethan,
Yes.
is there anything else on this list that you feel like warrants further discussion?
So I'm a big fighting game guy. I don't think I can push for these two fighting games to make it into a top 5 for us.
None of them, you
It's
don't think? Or
What if you had to pick one of them?
if I was to pick one of them, I would actually choose Grand Blue over Street Fighter 6.
hey, if you
Spicy
think you can
take.
make a case for it, then we're obviously open to it.
I
So.
do love variety.
I mean, I'll talk about it.
Okay. So the ones that aren't starred, and we can obviously talk about these ones first, are Street Fighter 6, World of Horror, we've cut RE4, and Alan Wake 2.
It's tough.
I think for me personally, I'm okay with letting go of RE4 Remake, even though it's Angus's pick.
No, I'm okay with it too. I think I get what you mean. Yeah, I
It's
had
mostly
to
that-
put it out there. I'm shocked
yeah.
at how much I enjoyed it.
I'm
I really
having
am.
a fantastic time, and I can't stress that enough. Like
Yeah.
the VR headset experience has been strange because a lot of good ones, quote unquote, are locked behind other headsets, which I think is fucking stupid. But anyways, with RE4, it was exclusive to the PSVR 2. Like they paid Capcom to make the RE4 one, and I think it's
free.
and it's free, and it's really
Well, it's a
really
free add-on
good.
to a game, you know.
But I have no idea how it like compares to like the REH1, how different that experience in VR is. That's why I would nominate it, and like that's why I understand it's cool, is because the VR.
Yeah,
experience is
I don't
really
know
fun,
if I'm gonna go back and play RE8 in VR, but I don't know how much that factors into my enjoyment of this game.
yeah.
But I get it. It's also like it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, you have to buy this game and a VR headset and
Yeah.
a PS5 if you don't have one. So it's just getting
Well, I heard the
but it's
VR, the non-VR mode is very, very good as well, right?
yeah,
But-
I've played a bit of the Mercenaries, which I wish the Mercenaries was in VR, but for certain reasons, I get why it can't be. Yeah, it's one of those things that I would say, like, this will be the last thing I'll say on it, is that, like, if you have a PlayStation VR, you owe it to yourself to play RE4
Oh, yeah.
Remake in VR mode in its entirety. It took me 13 hours to beat it. I loved every second of it. And it made me feel like a badass.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And Alan Wake 2 is a weird one because I really just love how different it is and the way that it portrays its storytelling. So I don't know. And it kind of sucks that we lose both survival horror games off of the list, but there is another survival game that's on the list here, Barrow Trauma. So anyway, what were you going to say, Matthew?
I was just going to say, so, I mean, the thing Alan Wake 2 has going for it is its storytelling and the parts where it's different. But do the parts where it's different make up enough of the game that the parts where it's the same as others in the genre, like, does it differentiate it enough? I guess what I'm getting at is combat and puzzle solving. Are those two elements alone good enough compared to others in its genre, or does it suffer in those areas?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
I
Because
would-
clearly it shines in the narrative, which I get, because I believe it's won a couple narrative awards specifically.
I
which,
can't speak highly enough of just the way.
But what about the game part?
But the
But
game
exactly,
part,
that's the thing. Like a game needs to do really well.
yeah,
that's what
Yeah.
I would think. Like I haven't beat it yet, but the 8 hours I've played of it, I really am not like blown away by the actual game part of
Mhm.
it. I am loving the presentation and the dramatics of it. Like,
Would it
I
make
guess
a better TV show?
it
Mm,
would probably. There was, I mean, the only like weird thing is they did this. I nominated, so Tuong, I feel this because I nominated Control for this kind of exact same reason. It was like it was a cool presentation. It was a really cool episodic sort of like approach to game design, but it was, I know Alan Wake's not like that, but Control was, but it's sort of the same idea. It's like this
Mhm.
really cool atmosphere.
Totally. I mean, it's in the
And-
same universe. There's
Yeah, it's the
people
same
from
universe.
Control in Alan Wake.
I did not like playing Control though.
Yeah.
I thought the
Neither did
shooting
I.
was dumb.
Neither did
I did not. Some of the powers were cool, but like it just did not feel good to play. Alan Wake does feel better, I guess. It does like the survival horror stuff well,
Mhm.
but other than that, it just feels like, yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, the presentation's good, and then that's it, kind of for me.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I do think it's like a little reductive in that way because the presentation is like very good, I would say. And it's also a benchmark for graphics in video games, which is a very cool thing. Like people use it as a showcase for their PC because of the way it does lighting is really good. You get some of that in the PlayStation 5 version and it looks really good, but apparently on PC.
But does
it
that
looks-
make it like a good
No,
game?
well, I would say it's still a good game, but the gameplay elements is not its strongest thing, right? So, yeah, I think I'm okay to let it go in that reason. Like I said, I got lost a few times in that game, and I'm like pretty okay at games, I would say, even though I'm playing it on story mode. But like, I just couldn't tell. It's like I found like you spend a lot of time, especially the beginning of the game, in a forest. And the forest is very darkly lit, and it's very hard to tell where the paths go. And I was lost for like good half hour at one point, and I'm like, this is crazy to me that it's not more. I don't need to handhold me, but I wish it was better at telling me like what
Have
sections.
fireflies or something.
I don't know. Like, point me somewhere in the right direction because I'm fucking losing it right now. I'm okay with letting it go. The one thing that I'll say to cap it all off is that I think it's really cool. I don't think it's a spoiler, but it gives you a good narrative reason to play it again. Its new game
cool.
plus is called The Final Draft.
Ooh.
Again, I won't go into spoilers, but it actually gives you a reason to play the game again. And there's different things that happen in the game in the final draft, where I think a lot of new game plus stuff is just like, okay, it's harder and you get all your stuff. Like, I don't know, from like, it doesn't feel very different, but this one's narratively different. So
And that came out
That's
recently too, right?
yeah, it did, like
Yeah,
in
okay.
free DLC. So
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I will shout out the one level, the We Sing level. I just like played that recently. That shit is fucking bonkers. But again, it just kind of like it just made it be like, okay, like presentation of everything was really good. I don't know if you guys are okay with spoilers here.
Well, yeah. I'm not. It's not the end of the world. I'll play it at some point. But
Okay.
yeah, say it, Ethan, because I think
Go for
Yeah,
it's
you
amazing.
You play as Alan Wake and you run through like a musical, like you're running through, and they have the
Okay, yeah,
live
yeah.
action FMV people singing and dancing. They did it
Dancing,
at the
yeah.
Game Awards.
That's
Yeah,
I figured. Okay.
That song's a banger.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
It's yeah.
It's wild. That's the thing is that game is so, it can be very scary, very weird, and then also very
yeah.
funny and corny in
that.
like a good way. So like it's just captivating to watch, and it's built like a TV series or season because
That's what I liked about the first one. Each chapter was like an episode.
Yeah.
And it was very like, yeah.
yeah, and they play credits music between chapters.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like, okay, sure, whatever.
Last time on Alan Wake.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've said what I need to say about Alan Wake, and let's move on to our stars list here. So we have Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario Wonder, Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, Remnant 2, Barrow Trauma, Hi-Fi Rush, Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. That's 8. We need to make it to 5. Let's do locks right away, probably just to see where our heads are at. So locks have to be unanimous. And then we'll talk about the ones that weren't locked. If someone waffles a little bit, we'll just move on. Zelda, is that a lock or no lock on the list? For me, that's a lock.
I would be willing to not lock it.
Okay.
I'd like to see some other arguments.
We'll talk
I'm
about
waffling.
it. We'll
I'm
talk
waffling.
We'll
Yeah.
waffle.
So yeah, I also
we'll
probably
talk about
yeah.
it. We'll talk about it. Super Mario Wonder, lock or no lock?
I want to hear you talk about it more, so I'm not willing to lock it. I
Okay.
did get a chance to play it. It is on my list to play, though.
Baldur's Gate 3, lock or no lock?
That's a lock for me.
Probably a lock, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lock. Armored Core 6.
That's a lock
Didn't
for
play
me.
it.
But
I
yeah, I
didn't
know
play it.
not everybody played it.
That's okay.
So
That just
that's
means-
A-okay.
Yeah. Remnant 2.
I'll sell you on it.
That's 100% a lock, and I'll take care of it for you guys. It's a lock.
You know what? I would also lock it. I want to get some good. There's some good indie games in our list right here, and I really want to make sure at least one of them makes it on
Totally.
so I would give that a lock.
I wouldn't call Remnant 2 a... Oh, I see
You
what you're
wouldn't
saying.
call
It's
Remnant 2 is an
double A at
indie game?
best.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. That's true.
I'm not ready to lock it yet, but I
Fair
do
enough.
want to talk. I want to hear about it. Barrow Trauma, lock or no lock?
That's a lock for me.
Yeah, the game's just too good.
I know you guys
spent
can't lock
so
it,
much-
but it's so fucking fun.
It looks.
we gotta
game's
get
wild.
we gotta get a big group. We gotta get you guys to get it and just play like 8 of us, 12 of us on a
Oh
sub.
my god!
God,
Even just
that's-
get like a rando on there, like some person
Oh.
from the internet.
I like the
fucking with
energy that you
wiring.
guys are talking with Barrow
Yeah.
Trauma. So
It's so special.
it can convince me, but
Yeah.
not yet.
You can rewire the submarine.
Oh, that means nothing to me. Hi-Fi Rush, lock or no lock?
I lock it, but like, I leave it to you. So we'll talk about it.
I guess we'll waffling
I
on
think
it.
so.
I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it. I can actually see
very
most
close.
of these. Actually, I can pretty much see all of these on the list in some form or fashion. Grand Blue Fantasy.
I love that game, but I don't think I can convince everyone to get on board with it, especially with some other ones on here.
Okay. You've convinced us before on fighting games to make the
Yeah.
list, so it's not unheard of.
That's true.
It's not unheard of. And I did check. This is our 7th game of the year, so that's
Wow.
wild. Yeah.
Way to go.
Look at us. Okay, so we've accomplished that Baldur's Gate 3 is a lock, so that is very telling.
Not shocking. Yeah. Can we talk about Tears of the Kingdom?
Yes, let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
So I really liked Breath of the Wild. I didn't finish it, but I did probably play about 40 hours in it. I definitely got caught up in that sense of I'm going to go somewhere and be open to getting distracted by other things along the way. And Tears of the Kingdom didn't really grab me in that way. I fully did not want to engage with the building mechanic outside of puzzle solving. I did not find the janky vehicles charming as everyone else did. I thought it was much cooler to have, like you guys said, the ability that takes you up, the one that lets you stick like a bat eye on your
Fuse,
arrow
yeah.
and
The
turn
fusing,
it into
yeah.
a homing arrow. I was like, that's fucking cool as hell. I almost wrote the game off entirely, and then I discovered the depths or whatever it's called, the under layer,
That's right.
and was like, holy shit, there's like a roguelike element in here. And then it's like, no, not really. Like you go down there and you can't heal the same way you do. So I was like, oh cool, I gotta like get good gear and then go down here to get even better gear and make it out with my gear. And then it's like it doesn't really work that way. And so like I was like, I don't know. But the
That'd be
islands,
a cool mechanic, though. I would have
that's-
played that.
that's what I mean, right? Like that's what I thought they were going for. So it to me, it just didn't grab me. I've played probably about 12 to somewhere between 12 to 18 hours of Tears of the Kingdom, and I found myself just trying to get places for most of it. It felt a lot more sparse than Breath of the Wild, but maybe I was just going in the wrong direction. I don't know. I would say like, oh, there's a tower in the distance. I want to reveal that part of the map. I'm gonna go towards it, and like I'd find a couple fights along the way. But like, and the
So-
Koroks, like help the Korok get to the other Korok. I did a couple of those, and was just like, I don't really want to help those guys anymore.
In regards
Please.
to finding things, the finding things part I actually felt was a little bit improved because it felt there was almost more like a puzzle to finding things on your path. And this sort of goes back to the whole in Breath of the Wild, as you were saying, Angus, the entire game exists on like a plane. There's levels of elevation to that plane, but you're still more or less walking in a direction. But in Tears of the Kingdom, there's
elevation.
there's elevation to it. And so that was where it was
Tears.
interesting because like you'd be walking for a bit and be like, I haven't seen anything for a while. There must be something I'm missing. And then like you look around, it's like, oh, there's a well over there. You go to the well, and then the well's like a whole cave system that culminates in a boss fight. Like there was just cool things in that regard where when you took those moments to explore and sort of pick at a thread, you were often rewarded. I remember I went back to the hub location, the very first like major hub location where you're introduced to the concepts of cooking and resting and talking to the village people. I went down into the rest area, and this lady's like, "Oh man, this hole just appeared in this wall." I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. I'm gonna go check out that hole in the wall." And I followed that hole in the wall, and it took me all the way back to like Hyrule Castle. And then I'm like, "What the hell?" And then like it just no one told me to do it. It was just like this whole organic moment. It was totally crazy. I found some super cool, powerful gear. I got my ass handed to me several times. That was the moment the game shined for me. The part I had a problem with is that when there was something I wanted to do, the game threw some of the most absurd barriers in the way. Early on, or sorry, I shouldn't say early on, way late. I mean, in the concept of the game as a whole, early on. Anyways, I found this shrine. It's like, hey, if you do this quest for the goddess, you get this cool power. I'm like, oh, I want to have a cool power. Great. What do I need? Well, you just need a dragon scale. I'm like, easy peasy. I know how to make a flying spaceship to get up to the dragon. I'll do that. And the dragon didn't spawn. I walked around the continent looking for this fucking dragon, and I could never find it until I did find it. I'm like, great. And so I used so many resources to create this stupid flying contraption to get me up to the dragon. And I got there, and I'm like, all right, I got the dragon skill. Great. Go back to the guys. Like, that was the wrong dragon scale.
Oh no!
There's 3 dragons.
Like mechanically. Oh, okay. Do you
Yes.
think that's something that would happen? Like if you had brought him any dragon scale, he'd send you off. To
They
get
want a
another
specific
or-
one. They want a
Oh,
specific
okay.
one.
Well, I was on the right dragon, but I needed a specific dragon scale. I wasn't at the right part of the dragon to get that. I
my
popped up the
God.
dragon,
Wow.
grabbed the first
Oh
scale,
Jesus! Okay.
and it's like, oh no, you need the one from the head. You got the one from the tail. You need the one from the head. I'm like, well, that's fucking stupid. And that was actually the last time I played the game. Like, it just sucked all the wind out of me.
I think about it in comparison to Baldur's Gate actually a lot, in terms of both games are very wide and there's a lot to do. But I find myself with Tears of the Kingdom, and I know this is the appeal for a lot of people, kind of like making your own fun in it and stuff like that. And it just made me all the more impressed with Baldur's Gate, where it's just like, oh, okay, I approach this mission and, sure, there's probably only like 10 ways to do it, but each of those 10 ways was thought of by the developer, and there's dialogue to go along with each of them and character reactions, and like, I don't know, it's just like I almost prefer I shouldn't say almost. I just found myself preferring a curated experience over an open world. Something crazy might happen and it might look a little janky. I found myself this year in particular, even one of the benefits I would say of Armored Core 6 is it's not an open world. It's here's a mission, here's a cool ass level, you're gonna fight on the roof of this starship that's like, exploding all around you, and it looks cool as fuck, or like a desert crawler monster thing, you know what I mean? Anyway, so Tears of the Kingdom just didn't grab me in that way. I'd love to hear what Ethan had to say about it.
Me too.
But I
Yeah,
also get that it should probably be on the list. I just don't know how high I'd put it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the open world fatigue is very, very real with a lot of people. So
it's
actually
killing game devs.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it is. It's that way of like, oh, so I totally threw it to you and then just jumped in there. My apologies. But yeah, it's one of the things that's leading to like burnout in game developers is the way you approach making an open world game is so different than how you'd approach like a curated game.
Right.
Anyway, but please continue, Ethan.
Yeah. So I'm actually looking over my notes, and I don't have as many gripes actually now that I'm looking them over. I think the main thing with me with the Tears of the Kingdom is you cannot go back and play Breath of the Wild after playing Tears of the Kingdom because of all of the like quality of life things in this game.
That's true.
It improves on
Cooking. Everything.
it's done
Yeah.
in the first game. However, it's just like it's so I feel very conflicted now about this game. I feel like, yeah, it's fantastic. Like this is top 5 games of the year for me. And it is top 5 for me on my list, but for our list, I'm kind of looking at it, I'm like, but what's really different? What's really new about this game or really pushing things forward a little bit? Angus, I did not really care. I did not really care about the like Ultra Hand making your own vehicles and stuff like that. I made one hover bike. I saw a YouTube video about use that all the time to get around.
I loved the shrines though. Doing the shrines, I was like, oh man, I feel so smart when I figured these out.
Oh yeah.
There's some really good stuff in there. I just found myself walking so long, and my horse is in a different province, so I can't whistle. It's like, come on, The Witcher can whistle and his horse appears from anywhere,
Yeah.
But like
you have to make a car. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. No, anyway, I think I agree with you, Ethan. It's a lot like Spider-Man 2 as well, where it's
No,
like,
it's not.
it's a better version of this game, but I don't know like how much it's innovating.
I completely disagree, but like I'm
Go
super,
for it.
I think whether you think, or sorry, I should back up. I don't want to come aggressive here. I don't think,
do it.
I
Be
think it's
aggressive.
more innovative than what you guys are giving it credit for, even if those things don't jive with you. The expanse in this game is so impressive to me because they crammed all of these systems that should break the game, and it kind of doesn't. Like, the game doesn't crash because of whatever fucking thing that you built. Like, all these systems should completely mess up everything. And to have like a way to solve a puzzle, not 10 ways, but hundreds of different ways, you solve these shrines on your own with your brain power. Sometimes you can game it. Sometimes you can just make a long ass bridge and just get to the end. But hey, listen, you did that. You're the one who solved it in that way. But me, I might have done it a different way. And I think the stories that come out of those things that come with the Ultra Hand specifically is incredible, and not like things that I've seen. Like, people compare the building and all these vehicle stuff like Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts, and I can see like the comparison to that. But it's the Ultra Hand's more than the building. Of course you can do it. We've all seen it. Not everyone is a great builder. I'm not. But the things that you can kind of like scrap together to solve a puzzle, especially in a shrine, that kind of either barely work, or you're like, oh my God, like my heart beated so fast as I'm like building a thing that would only last long enough for me to get to the end of the thing. And as it's disappearing, I would use my ascend ability to like get to the final part of the shrine. And that made me feel smart. This game can make you feel smart, but uniquely to the person who's playing it. And I think that is an incredibly empowering feeling in a game. And the Ultra Hand, like I said, it's not just putting things together. That's a huge part of it, but moving things around like the world freely. It's kind of like the magnesis power in Breath of the Wild, but this one's on drugs. Like, you can just move basically whatever you want, right?
I liked helping the guy with his signs. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
As Tuong, you pointed out, each ability almost feels like a natural advancement of what was presented in Breath of the Wild. Magnesis has transformed into the grab anything and move it ability. You can now craft objects at any time, which kind of is an advancement of the ice block. Stasis has been evolved with the reversal ability. Like, each ability sort of been brought to its best form in Tears of the Kingdom, which is what I agree with. Where I come from is that it almost feels like Breath of the Wild was the first half of a game where Nintendo's like, we've worked on this long enough, we got to get it out. And don't get me wrong, Breath of the Wild didn't feel incomplete by any measure. It felt like a very robust and full game. But now that I've played Tears of the Kingdom and looking back on Breath of the Wild, I'm realizing like, well, this is what Breath of the Wild should have been. Had this been what Breath of the Wild was, would have been my game of the year, hands down.
Right.
Or another way of approaching it, had I never played Breath of the Wild and I'd only played Tears of the Kingdom, once again, game of the year, hands down. But I feel like I'm just playing the second half of a game that I've already played when I played Tears.
And that's something that is, I think, is a fair point, I guess, is that because it's a sequel using the same engine and system, or not systems, but like the look and feel of the game, it's naturally going to feel like a sequel, like Spider-Man and God of War. Like, you know, it has that to it. But I think the systems that the abilities that they give you in Tears of the Kingdom are way more impressive to me than the abilities in Breath of the Wild, because of how you can mold it to whatever experience you want. And the game is complete. They're not doing any DLC for this game. Like, people, they could easily just fart one out because it's one of the best selling games on the Switch, hands down. But they're like, no, this game is done. This game's just done.
I find myself in this situation where I'm like, objectively, I think it's a good, like, you could look at it in an objective sense and be like, this is a good game. Similar to like The Last of Us 2, where I'm like, this is a good game. I just don't like it very much.
And I can't convince you of that part. So obviously,
and that's what I mean. That's why I say, like, I'm like, I feel like Tears of the Kingdom should be on this list. I just don't know how high it should go.
I will say right now it's my game of the year,
which I want to take into consideration for sure.
But the thing is, like, I think Baldur's Gate does more, which we'll talk about later. Like, I can understand how Baldur's Gate might make our number one, and I'd be completely fine with it. But I like the feeling of, ooh, what's over there, and discovering my own fun. That is just like up my alley of like, oh, I went this way to find one thing, and yet I'm distracted by all these things that are I feel like it's only my adventure. And then talking about this game with people being like, hey, did you fucking see the thing in the cloud? And did you do that whole thing where it's all stormy and all this other stuff? That was, some parts is just like, oh, I can't believe I discovered this. I'm the king. I found this. Nobody else did. And it's very special in that way, I think. So
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to talk about, like, we talked about a lot of the mechanics there, but the game also, like, the story is way better. There's actually, it feels like there's actually a story in this one.
I love that there was a reason for the weapons to fall apart.
Yes.
Like that was part of the story. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I love that. Anyway,
Yeah. They really added some stuff, some plot to like follow along with this one. And along the way, they give you like options to be like, hey, go check out these geoglyphs so you can like explore the world more, and gives you, there was a lot of criticism, I guess, with the first one, because it was so just open-ended. You could go wherever you want. This one, it looked like they really took the time to guide you more through it, but still kind of give a lot of open-endedness to do what you want, which was cool. But also the dungeons, they're so much better than the Divine Beast. I'm still a little cheese that it's just not like a maze of enemies and puzzles, and then you find a boss key and go find the room. These were still kind of like flip 6 switches and then the boss door opens. It was still weird, but they were way more interesting to me. And I think that's what I liked a lot too.
Going back to what Tom was saying about like building any kind of solution you want. I remember being in the fire dungeon and my wife approached me, was like, how do you solve this puzzle? I'm like, oh, I just built a bridge. I just built like a fucking 20-piece long bridge. And I walked across it. And she's like, that doesn't seem like the right solution. I'm like, but it was a solution.
And it was a solution. And I remember that fire one too. I was like, I don't actually know how you're using this like train system to get through the level, or like cart system.
The mine carts.
And I'm like, oh man, I'm actually don't know how to get to that part. You know what I'm going to fucking do? I'm going to build a plane. I'm going to like strap some rockets to it. And that, again, it's just like one of those things where like I solved it this way. Ethan would have solved it a different way. Matthew would have done it another way. And I think that's just a really juicy thing.
What would Angus have done?
Angus
turn the game. I didn't make it to that dungeon. No, you're right.
And yeah, like we barely touched on the things like the fusing of the weapons completely negates,
I thought that was awesome.
Negate the whole complaint of weapons breaking in that game. It's like, who could fuck cares? I'll just fuse these 2 swords together, and then I'll fuse that one to a rock, that one to a boomerang, that one, and some of them.
I did feel a little silly to be like, oh, my best weapon is a sword with a rock stuck to the end of it. I felt like it was like the complaint I've heard from a friend who shall remain nameless, that the guy in Death Stranding looks too ridiculous with all the bags on his back to be taken seriously. I'm like, well, Link walks around and I've got 3 different swords with 3 different rocks attached to them. And I'm just like, I like the better ones where it's like, oh, I took a bone and I stuck a horn to it and then I throw it like a boomerang now. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there for sure.
The game has a very cool, like, consistent logic with its weapon building where it's like, all right, early on you figure out rubies make weapons do fire damage, but then once you start playing with what that means, it gets like very interesting. And
it feels like its openness maybe keeps it like, I feel like it could be like an insanely great game if it was just a little smaller. Do you get what I mean? In terms of like width of like, sure, still
you just like you want to grab the corner tab and just like, sort of bring it in.
Just eliminate some of this wide open space, just a little bit, you know, and just channel it. Give me a little bit more direction.
And I'll be fair, like I'm not saying that like the game. I fucking love the game. Obviously, I do. I've been talking about it for a little while. But like, I don't think it's perfect. It's hard to find a perfect game. Like, there's aspects of the sky and the depths where I'm like, oh, I wish it was like this. I wish the sky was more like the first area you start in, where there's multiple big sky islands. Where the sky islands are actually kind of like very small after the big one. And then in
I was super underwhelmed by those.
The depths, there's a lot of similar shit going on, but there's always exceptions to those rules. Like in the sky and the depths, even though there's some samey stuff, there is some fun, unique stuff spread across it where, all of a sudden you're in a cave in the depths that you didn't think you could get to, and then you find a cool thing at the end.
Whenever the game had me die from like the sky all the way down to the depths, it always had my interest.
It is cool.
Super fucking cool.
Should we lock Tears of the Kingdom and move on?
I think we should.
So.
Yeah,
we spent a lot of time talking about Tears of the Kingdom. All right.
Let's talk about a perfect game, Remnant 2.
Let's talk about it.
Just so we're clear, this is your game of the year. This is your number one spot.
By far my game of the year.
Cool. Just want to.
That's good to know.
Where it ends up on the final list is up for debate, but let's talk about its strengths. So Remnant 2 is a very focused experience. You are dropped into a randomized world of a series of passageways full of enemies. You make your way from point A to points B or C, sort of going back to that random events thing I mentioned earlier, shooting the bad guys along the way, using your abilities, and if you're lucky, you may find a cool piece of equipment that you can use to either change your build or improve your build or what have you. Eventually, you're confronted with a boss. You kill the boss. You're definitely rewarded with something cool for killing the boss. And then you move on to the next challenge. What I've painted there in that picture sounds very samey, but bosses are always unique and interesting. Equipment is varied and always opens up new avenues of play. The archetype system always makes it so like even if you're replaying what feels like the same event for the umpteenth time, if you approach it with a new build, it just feels different. You have to approach it from a different perspective. It's a game that has so many layers of both replayability and customization that like there's always something new to do. Even if you've quote unquote solved the game and you have the perfect build, you're like, well, fuck it. Now I'm going to play the worst build imaginable and see how far I can get with that. So that's like the game at a glance. But there's also this cool thing it does with its events. The events are kind of where the game shines. Whether they be puzzles or combat or just like a weird sort of dialogue chain you need to figure out, these events pop up as you're playing the game and you need to get through them to get the reward. Early on when I was playing, I mentioned I was in this like Bloodborne-esque world. It was sort of out of Victorian England, full of these enemies. I was navigating the sewer system. I ended up in the side passage that wasn't on the map. I'm like, okay, there's going to be something juicy in here. And then I could see this little alcove off in the wall. I'm like, there's something in that alcove. Problem was, there's a big ass gap in the way. There was no way for me to bridge that gap. So I explored the room where I eventually saw some enemies. I killed them and I burst this like clog in a pipe and water started pouring out. I'm like, okay, classic Legend of Zelda shit here. The pipe's gonna and fill the room up with water and I'm gonna jump and get to the thing. And it didn't happen. And so I'm like, okay, well, whatever. And so I left. I explored the rest of the dungeon. And then eventually I came back to that room and the water was higher. And I realized, oh shit, this water is filling up the room in real time. It took 45 minutes of real time to fill this room up with water enough for me to jump across the platforms to get to this cool ass grenade launcher, which rocked. That's right. And
I was gonna say, which ring did you get?
No, it got me a cool ass grenade launcher. But there's a whole bunch of quests like that. I mean, to speak more of it would almost do a disservice to the game. But like every time you sort of poke and prod at the game, it rewards you for not only trusting the game itself, but also trusting your knowledge of games you've played in the past. I remember talking to a friend, he's like, oh, when I ran into that, I played Metal Gear Solid 3. I knew immediately what to do to solve that puzzle. I'm like, what do you mean? Does that come up in Metal Gear Solid 3? He's like, oh, yeah, that's old shit. And I'm like, but did you get this reward? It's like, there's a second reward? And I'm like, oh, buddy. It's just like, the game's just so good.
Sounds like the sense of discovery is like amazing in this game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember Angus and I were in a sci-fi world. We spent 30 minutes just trying to like, how do we open this door? And then we eventually figured it's like, oh, you just have to like connect the wires. But the way you connect the wires is the puzzle, and I won't spoil that. But
I love the class system in it. I think the gameplay is super tight and good. The only shortcoming I would say with it is that like, and it's not even that big a strike against it, is that like I found myself kind of semi-frequently disappointed by some of the rewards I got, but I'm also like, I'm a pretty like bare bones gamer of like, I've got this rifle. I would love an automatic rifle, or I would love, like a slightly better version of this gun. And then it's like, well, okay, here's a 3-round burst crossbow that when you reload, it turns you invisible. So, you know what I mean? You'll get a gun and it'll be like maybe a bit more mechanically complicated than what you're looking for, rather than something that just slots into your build that you've already got. But that's really a preference thing. You know what I mean? So, like that's not inherently a bad thing. That's just something I found myself like, oh, cool, I fought this boss. I got to take this crafting piece to this person. They're going to make it into a gun. Oh, it's a gun I'm never going to use. And that happened like 12 times for me because I'm like, I'm a simple man. I like my lever action rifle. I like my pistol, but that's me. That's a very much a preference thing.
This game is not a looter shooter. A lot of people advertise it as a looter shooter. It is not. It is not a shooter.
It is
through and through a Souls-like, wherein Like in Dark Souls, you'll find a piece of equipment on a guy. It's not like a clear upgrade on your last great sword. It is a great sword with a twist. And the same way, this is like, oh, it's a lever action rifle, but it's a lever action rifle with a twist.
Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, in my opinion,
I did eventually find a gun that I liked, and it it had lifesteal. It was my favorite. It was great. Anyway, I should just say it's like sometimes that unsatisfying feeling would happen, but that is very like Matthew's about to say, very preferential and not inherently a strike.
I think we should lock it and move on. Because
I think so too.
I think the
Number
passion behind it. Well, let's not go that far. But it's your number one, yeah. But I think the passion behind it is strong enough that I think it belongs on this list. Let's talk about some of Ethan's picks here. Like, is Hi-Fi Rush or Grand Blue Fantasy going to make this list?
Depends on how much you like Super Mario Wonder or Armored Core 6 Fires of the Rubicon.
I appreciate that we're saying the full name every time.
Yeah, I never played Armored Core. I thought it looked really cool, and then I got kind of deterred by the fact that it's level based. I was expecting a little bit more towards the open world kind of thing with Armored Core. They said no, it's fucking not. So I got kind of deterred by that. But hearing you talk about it, it sounds like it's piqued my interest again, and I definitely
did you play any of the Ace Combat games?
Never. Nope.
Oh, okay. Well, for any listeners, it's kind of like an Ace Combat game where you've got a mission and you do the mission in that zone. I will say with Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon, you every time you spawn into a level, you can take like alternate paths to go poke around, and you'll find like an enemy, and if you kill them, you get a combat log. You collect enough combat logs, and you get a unique piece of gear that you can only get through combat logs. And so there are definitely reasons to play through the levels multiple times. And there's an arena mode that comes into play where you play against AI armored cores, and you fight them, and they get progressively harder, and you can test out. It's a fun way to like, oh, I'm going to test out this new build. I don't want to play through a whole level. I'm just going to fire up this S rank guy and see if I can kill them. But I also appreciate a game that doesn't try to lock me in forever.
Yeah, so I really hear the passion for Armored Core 6. If I was to go to bat for one of the other games that I nominated, it would be Hi-Fi Rush over Grand Blue, I think.
Oh, interesting. Even though you like Grand Blue more?
No, I think I like Hi-Fi Rush more. And for a Game of the Year list, a collective list, I think Angus was backing me a little bit more. It hasn't even played Hi-Fi Rush.
I get what you mean, though. It feels right. Yeah. Not to say Grand Blue's not a good game, but Hi-Fi Rush feels very unique, and I just like giving it the spotlight a little bit.
Let's cut then Grand Blue Fantasy just so we can figure this out some more. Yeah. Knowing that obviously Ethan fucking loves it. So
go play this game. There's no excuse. It's for free. You can go download it, and weekly rotations, choose a character, and just fucking mash on each other.
I love it. Okay, so Hi-Fi Rush, Barrow Trauma, Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Have to say the whole thing. AC6 FOR.
AC64.
AC64. Or SMW. I'll say it again. Super Mario Wonder, Armored Core 6, Barrow Trauma, and Hi-Fi Rush are the 4. And we need, 2 more? So we need cut 2. Or we need 2 to make it on the list. How about, is there one out of the 4 that everyone kind of is leaning towards or just want to hear more about, and we can kind of go from there? Like, I think Barrow Trauma is a cool thing, but if I had to pick between indies on this list, I guess Hi-Fi Rush seems more up my alley, I guess.
So not to complicate things further, I understand that Remnant 2 is Matthew's Game of the Year. I would put Barrow Trauma higher than Remnant 2 perhaps, but that's also, it's very dependent on multiplayer and having a group to play with. So there's a few, like, you have to have friends, but it's a place where you could make friends, so I get it. It's a little bit of a harder sell.
Barrow Trauma at its best is an amazing game, but Barrow Trauma at its worst is a bit of a slog because you're just going through what is an otherwise pretty grueling game by yourself with no one to even joke around with. You're just like subjecting yourself to torment for no reason.
I will say I have zero interest in playing it single player.
And that's kind of one I wanted to hear because I don't play a lot of games multiplayer. I just don't have the capacity to usually schedule that stuff. It takes a lot of, in adulthood, it takes a lot of time to try to pull all the strings to be like, okay, we have a game night this night.
Yeah.
It takes so much effort to do that. So I find those types of multiplayer games, as much as I loved them when I was growing up, I don't have time for them. So
just to throw one more thing in there, one more piece of praise, because I see where this is going for Barrow Trauma. It has in it the tools needed to have one of those social deduction games like Among Us or like there's like cabinets that you can access that only certain members of your crew are allowed to access, or there's like, oh, there's a vent on this ship that's loose that you could hide maybe a weapon in, these kinds of things. There's a lot of possibilities, but like I was kind of complaining about with another particular game, it puts a lot of the onus on you as a player to kind of like, okay, cool, go role play with your friends, call Matthew captain for an entire night, but that's a blast. I had a wonderful time.
I'm working up to the point where I'm saying we can strike this from the list, but I will provide one last anecdote of the game, a moment which really shone out. I was playing one night with my friends. It was a crew of 3 of us on a submarine. We were supposed to go save someone who was stuck on a derelict sub that had crashed. We got to the sub. It was a false distress beacon sent out by a monster. It shot a spike up into the hull of our submarine and started flooding it with digestive fluid, and we had to simultaneously fight the spike out of our sub while then breaking free and going back to kill the sub that was trying to kill us. The sub had turned into a monster.
That's pretty cool.
That's so fucking cool. I wasn't there for that night. That's amazing.
I do have one other thing to kind of throw to this. I know all else being equal, like if, we can't always play multiplayer games because we can't get friends to join at the same time.
Yeah.
But all else being equal, if you could get a group of friends, like, I guess I'm trying to even the playing field. Like, we're playing Barrow Trauma with the friends that I have, or we're playing Hi-Fi Rush, just single player. Like, what game at its peak is going to be better, So I don't know if we should throw away a game just because you need friends to play it.
I agree, because it's also that thing of like, it's a hard to plan and get a group together, but that almost makes it more like more rewarding when you do.
I was going to say, and I like the thesis of the argument. I think it's really good. Like, even though I have no friends and I can't play multiplayer with
we'll play with you.
No. I think a good multiplayer game should still stand on its own in single player. That's how I feel. Like, there is inherent fun playing multiplayer games, any multiplayer games with a group of friends, no matter what the game is. You can find fun in, I don't know, let's say Modern Warfare 3, which hasn't got a bunch of big praise this year. But we
campaign's shorter than this episode.
Sure, yeah, exactly. But if we all got together and played any game together, we're going to have fun, no matter what. Probably. True. Right? And it sounds like Barrow Trauma brings a lot of that, like, it instigates a lot of like good moments with a good group of people too. But I mean, I also want to be able to play like Remnant 2, for example. Like, I think that sounds like a really good multiplayer game. And it also sounds like I could still probably play it in single player if 100%. I wanted to.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3, same thing. Great in multiplayer, but I can also play in single player. So now I don't have this game that's just sitting on the shelf for me to whip out once in a while.
Fair. Sure.
Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken all I need to say about Barrow Trauma. If it gets stricken from the list, that's fine. But seriously, if you do have a regular play group that enjoys playing together, and not like against each other, but playing together, pick it up. You're gonna have fun.
So if a group of people picked it up for a LAN party, I think they could probably have a good time with it. I will say maybe it takes it to your second time playing it to understand a few of the mechanics, but it's so good. It's so good once you get it.
Would you say also with Barrow Trauma, I'm just trying to like kind of, right now I'm trying to pick my brain between Barrow Trauma and Hi-Fi Rush, because I think maybe one of these should actually make the list because they represent a smaller...
So to throw it out there with the 3 that are left, if we do cut Barrow Trauma, I would push for Hi-Fi Rush and Armored Core to make the list.
And I think I would push for I could see an argument between I mean, I'm happy to fight out AC6 Fires of Rubicon.
I just don't know how wowed I am by this Mario game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess the thing is that you're not much of a Mario guy to begin with, right? So,
no, the last one I played was Odyssey, and I played it 2 years after it came out and was like, oh, this is kind of fun. It's pretty dope.
Yeah.
So anyways, I am always surprised. But anyway,
I do think... Well, what do you guys think? Do you think Barotrauma or Hi-Fi Rush should come into the list? One of them, one of the two?
I think at least one of them.
I
Yeah,
think
one
so
of them.
too. I think so too. I think so too. And then we can make it different than the other game of the year lists out there.
I would say Hi-Fi Rush. If we had to go with one of them, I think even though I haven't played it, I don't know. I'd maybe give the edge to Hi-Fi Rush.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's so tough.
So
Can I ask one more question about Barotrauma? I know we've talked a lot about it, but is it accessible to people who don't play video games? Like, is it a thing that, like, if I were to have a group of friends over right now and we're like, let's throw on like a multiplayer game to just play together?
No, you need to have some gamer IQ to play it.
Okay.
It's not, but also I don't think that's a strike against it.
No. I'm
yeah.
just curious, like, what level of like gamer IQ?
It is a gamer's game. So
Yeah.
I touched on this earlier where you could like rewire the sub. I wasn't really embellishing or joking about that. Like the submarine is a living construct. When we were playing at the LAN party, we realized that with the amount of hands we had on the sub, we had no way of regularly monitoring our fuel levels. And so my friend rigged up a mechanism to wire the fuel level reading to the control room, which like spanned 3 levels within the submarine. He used that with in-game mechanics of wires and output systems and a screen. And then it just had like a screen that read fuel count, 94%. And you can do that for anything. Like, as we mentioned earlier, there's clowns that'll get on your ship. They'll rewire shit on you, and now stuff's not working right anymore. And so not only do you have to deal with the problem of the clowns, but you also have to unwire what they did. And if you don't know how to do that, well, your ship's just fucked for the rest of the playthrough.
Yeah.
Like, so to some people, it's like, well, that doesn't sound very fun. But once again, when you're in a group of friends and you're like at the bottom of the ocean trying to figure out how to rewire a submarine as monsters are attacking you, it's pretty fucking funny.
I will say too, like every time we failed and like our sub was destroyed and we all died, I was never frustrated or mad. We were generally laughing. Like there was one where we had cultists. We took a job from a cult and they gave us these containers. And one of us, I can't remember if it was me or if it was Michael, one of the guys in our group, we just kind of like, has anyone looked inside these containers to see what they are? And or no, that's what it was one of them like was moving. It had something alive in it. And we're like, holy shit, they put there's a monster on the ship in one of our cargo containers. So we like locked it up, or we tried to open the box. That's what it was. We tried to open the box. It jumped out. One of the guys shot at it. He shot me in the leg. And it's just like there's some fun chaos to it. It's a very unique game. I haven't played anything like it.
For people who've played it, if you've played Dwarf Fortress and that sort of emergent gameplay of like shit happens and you have to react to it, Barotrauma is like that. You just have a little bit more agency, but it's still very similar to that, where you are just a small piece in a world that is moving around you. And if that appeals to you, it's great. But as we already pointed out, it is a gamer's game. You're not giving this to your 8-year-old to keep them preoccupied for an afternoon. This is a game you're playing because you want to play Barotrauma.
Yeah.
Well,
what about Hi-Fi Rush? What do you think?
What about Hi-Fi Rush?
There's lots of anecdotes and talking about the player experiences and things like that. There's really not to like, it was a great game. Like it was I think the uniqueness of the blending of rhythm and stylish action is phenomenal. It boggles my mind that no one's thought of this until right now. And just the wacky and zaniness of the plot of this story. Like the second level in this game, you're going around. So the Vandalay company is in charge of whatever, and there's a bunch of department heads and department of like finance, department of R&D and stuff like that. So in the second level, the department of R&D, you're going around, and instead of like a boss fight, you're actually running around the level, destroying everything in this like research and development lab to like the boss's health bar is a budget, and you're depleting his budget with everything that you're destroying. So it's that kind of personality in this game. There's like the finance boss, actually, it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. So this like really kind of old timey guy, and then he just like transforms into this giant animatronic werewolf guy, and you have to beat him up in the game. Just a lot of really fun. It's just fun and personal, vibrant. I don't really have anything else to say about it. And maybe that kind of speaks to the game. Maybe.
It sounds like it's got excellent flavor or like an amazing vibe. That's always what catches me about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It's hard to say because there's such different games. You can have fun with your friends and have those really unique moments, or you can play Hi-Fi Rush, which is something that I haven't seen made into a game before, the combination of these genres. So I guess it's like, what do we want to put onto this list to represent 2023?
Yeah, Tung, you've played neither of these games.
No, but I think
assuming all things are equal.
all things are equal. I've
don't
never
know.
heard of Barotrauma until tonight, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but like the way you guys are speaking of it sounds really cool. Some of it comes off as like, this is the experiences that you guys have are very much within your friend group who plays regularly games together, and you find these moments together naturally in whatever game you guys play. You guys, you talk about this in like the way you guys speak about Remnant 2 and even like other Game of the Year podcasts. Like the vibe is that obviously you guys play a lot of games together, and you can get this amazing multiplayer experience together. And it's obviously a big bonus when the game is also good too. But I have a feeling that even if the game wasn't good, you guys would find a way to have fun anyways.
Yeah, we've played some terrible games together.
Totally.
For way too long.
And I don't want to say Barotrauma is a bad game.
No, it's not.
Because of that. Just trying to separate the level of excitement and where the game actually fits into this whole picture.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
But Hi-Fi Rush, it also seems unfair in the way that like that's just a game that is more appealing to me in general because I like rhythm games and I fucking love a stylish game, and I also love a dumb protagonist. Like it's just that's just my flavor of stuff anyways. So
I also want to take into consideration too that like in terms of like we've all got like different weightings for these games. I like to pay close attention to particularly like what is your game of the year.
Yeah,
Ethan,
totally.
of your three nominations, is Hi-Fi Rush the top of those three?
No, it's Baldur's Gate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if that changes things for you.
I mean,
I will throw out something.
Yeah.
So we've been talking just two games here. How about the other two? So Armored Core 6, I haven't played it.
Matthew's played it?
But I haven't really heard much about Super Mario Wonder.
Yeah.
To me, like it's a fun game. It's a fun Mario game, and that's kind of where it ends for me. So
I could talk about it because I know.
And I never did the online, so I'd like to hear more about that, I guess.
How much have you played, Ethan?
I have beaten it.
You've beaten it? Okay. And did you play
I haven't done all the secret worlds yet.
Oh, that stuff's crazy. Did you play local multiplayer or anything like that?
I just passed it off. Like me and Molly. Yeah, we did. We played local multiplayer, and then we also ended up just like picking Mario and then passing the controller back and forth.
Oh, okay. Cool. I would say the local multiplayer, here's a knock against Super Mario Wonder, is I think the local multiplayer is better than some other local multiplayer Mario games where in like new Super Mario Brothers, you're always fucking bonking into each other and then like throwing them off cliffs, which is funny for the first hour and then incredibly frustrating as things go on. This game doesn't have that. It solves the problems of that type of collision, but it does have a problem with who it focuses on the camera. So it's not player one who is in charge of the camera. It's whoever's in front who has the camera control, which I find bizarre, and I don't like that. And I've heard from like other podcasters who have children and stuff like that who want like a more family-friendly Nintendo Mario experience, that it's not perfect in that way. It could be better for that camera control, but also it has like, which I think is smart and dumb and very Nintendo, it has characters that are invincible to damage. They can die if they fall off a cliff, but they are invincible to damage. You know, like you could touch a Goomba or a Spike and you're just kind of phased for a little bit. But you can't choose who that is. Like you can't be like, as a kid, you're like, I want to play Mario or Peach.
Oh, I see.
You have to play as one of the 4 Yoshis or Nabbit.
Get good, scrub.
So which I think is a frustrating experience for children. A great idea that there's invincible characters, but why not just make all of them invincible and just toggle there's a kid playing kind of situation.
Life doesn't work that way, kid.
Okay,
You idiot.
So I think, Ethan, you could probably agree that like the levels in this 2D Mario game are, par for the course for Nintendo in the way that that they're going to be really well designed, and that there's going to be levels that are harder than others and some that like challenge your platforming skills compared to other levels. And I think there are some really well-designed platforming levels in this 2D game that I love 2D platformers. I think that they're just like, it's one of my genres that I'm just like a sucker for. I grew up on it. And I found that over the years that it's hard to find an innovative way to push that genre forward. And I think Mario Wonder does a really good job at trying to do that with its badge system, that, again, it's a thing that you can just change out abilities throughout the levels. Sometimes you don't want to use other abilities, and sometimes you stick with one ability throughout the course of the game, however you want to play it. But at least the choice is yours of what ability you want to choose. But I think the Wonder Flowers is where it really sets things more interestingly apart, is because it changes the level in like significant ways. You can be a fucking riding a dragon at one point. You could be a Goomba, and now you're playing a completely different game where you're like hiding behind a tree.
So I have a question about the Wonder Flowers.
Yeah.
So I'm playing World 1, Level 1.
Yep.
There's a Wonder Flower there.
Yes.
Every time I hit the Wonder Flower, it does the same thing in that level, or it's
in that
different
level, it does that thing. In the next level, you hit a Wonder Flower.
Sure,
and it can do a completely different thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is just like, it's like a warp pipe, but it changes the mechanic. In that like, it doesn't change, but it's just like more of that level. That level's gimmick is.
Do I have to hit the Wonder Flower?
No, you don't. You can skip it if you want to.
Yeah.
But like I would say,
but it's not like the dragon one or the one that changes the perspective on the level could happen on any of them. It only happens in the one where it's preordained to happen on. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, they design it for that level. Yes. And sometimes,
that's what I mean.
Sometimes they repeat a few, but a lot of the time it's unique. And I think that's really cool because there's like 8 worlds with multiple fucking levels that are going on. And they're all like unique experiences. And a lot of them are very fun and colorful and vibrant. But like I said, I think the main thing for me for this game was its surprisingly online system. And I'm not sure how much more I have to add, except for saying that like some of the best moments I had in this game, and I love games like Journey, where it's like you can't really talk to the person, you see them, but you're having this communication that isn't words. Like you're just there and they're there and you're going through the same experience. And this is happening in a Mario game. And I thought, I was going to play the whole game single player like Ethan did. But I found myself like first 2 worlds, I'm like, yeah, this game's good. But and the Wonder Flowers are cool and stuff like that. But like, I don't know, like, is there anything more that this game can give me? I'll try the online for a bit. And it really turned the whole game on its head for me anyways, because of that shared experience of going through the levels together and reviving people when they were down. Like if they fall off a cliff, not only can they touch my standee, but I can go get them. I could go like catch their ghost before they completely game over. And that's really cool. The very final secret levels in that game is, they always do this in Mario games. It's like the super hard fucking levels that they don't want like the scrubs to play. It's like, if you really like this game, here you fucking go. You think you're really good at Mario games? There you go. And the last level of this Mario game is ridiculous. It's super hard, and I played it online, and there was so many moments in this thing where you're like, I was playing multiplayer with other people and we were rezzing each other, and like when we got past a little part of the level, we'd like stop and just like spam the emote button, be like, yeah, good job, we fucking did it, we did this together. And I might not ever see that player again, and that's such like a special moment. Yeah,
that's a magical moment. That's
the
magical
power
of gaming.
It's the power of gaming, exactly. And otherwise, like, I think it just looks and sounds really good, and I think the level designs are really good too. That all said, like, and there's more than just levels in this game. There's obviously like boss battles, and then there's like these mini levels they call them break levels, and these levels are like 10 seconds long, but they have like one gimmick or one thing that you have to do. Like it's a musical level, and you just have to fucking like jump to the beat and get the Wonder Flower or whatever. Anyways.
So it's Hi-Fi Rush.
It's a Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do we really need 2 rhythm games?
Yeah, and then there's like levels where you're like, you have to find key. This is the one where like it was built for multiplayer. Like they put you in like a section where it's like, you got to find 5 keys that is spread across this level, this big area. But if you play it in multiplayer mode, then you just see a bunch of ghosts. I think like up to 4 ghosts that are other people that are playing the same level. And that's when it was fun to be like, oh, I'm going to put my standee here. What does a standee here mean? Oh, this player is trying to tell me something. And then like if I find something, I'm like, I'm going to try to tell something to the other player. I'll put my standee down here. Different in Dark Souls in the way that you can't like write down what you want to say, but just the act of having a thing there makes you think of it like, oh, this player's trying to tell me something. I want to act on that. Anyways, I think it's wonderful. I think it's a wonderful game.
It is a wonderful game.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to concede Hi-Fi Rush. I think the passion for Super Mario Wonder, Barotrauma, exceeds my own passion for Hi-Fi Rush. I think it's a fantastic blending of these two genres, like I've been constantly saying. But yeah, and I think Armored Core 6 looks hella sick. So yeah,
that's a shame.
I'll
Yeah,
concede that.
I think of all the games on the list that I haven't played, Hi-Fi Rush is probably the one I'm gonna pick up next. The Super Mario Wonder, I love that Tuong loves it, and I like a good platformer. Although I was more of a 3D platformer kid, it's not really selling me. But that's not every game on the list has to be for me. You know, that's why I wanted to get Hi-Fi Rush on there.
It's one of the few games this year I 100%ed. Mario and Spider-Man 2. I 100%ed both those games.
That's powerful. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about Armored Core 6 real quick because Matthew's played it. I want to get more of your thoughts on it. And do you think it belongs, as the only other person who's played it, do you think it belongs in the top 5?
Ooh, that's a tricky question. Never played any other Armored Core game, so I can't really say whether it's improved on the genre.
Just this one.
But this game was fun. It scratched that same itch I always love to get from a combat game, which is here's a puzzle, you have to overcome it. And as Angus said, the puzzle isn't necessarily learning the mechanics of the fight. It can just be like, choose a different loadout, find a loadout that beats the boss. And there was a lot of fun in that. The part I always had trouble when it came to those moments was that even if you are picking a new loadout to beat a boss, you're still having to relearn a lot about the rhythm of that game. It is a rhythm game. No, sorry. But there is a rhythm to like how you fire the guns. Like you can't just fire all 4 of your guns at the same time and hope to hit the boss. Like you have to sort of like bait them out and like do fun gimmicks to get them to hit them. And when it works great. And when it doesn't work, you're like, I'm just a fucking idiot and this boss is beating the shit out of me. All that to say is I enjoyed the time I had with Armored Core, but I reached a boss that I just couldn't beat. And I was just getting so frustrated beating my head against it. And no amount of changing up really got me past it. And I hit a brick wall. I just moved on to a different game. Does that mean it shouldn't be on the top 5 list? No. But for a From Software game, I had a problem with the design element of like you can't sort of mechanics your way around a boss. Because to me, that's sort of the hallmark of a From Software game is like, it doesn't really matter what weapon you bring into a fight. There's a way to learn the boss enough to get around it.
Oh, I see. Sure.
No matter how much I like switch things up, but still try to keep it in my sort of niche of the game I'd carved out. Like I just couldn't do it. Yeah.
Because you mentioned like
to it.
You mentioned changing because changing the lower half of your mech does change how you move in varying degrees. Like I prefer the reverse jointed legs. They're really good at jumping. So you can be very vertical. You could jump over guys and shoot down at them and stuff like that. It's awesome. I find myself when I run into a wall, I don't find myself changing that part of the mech. I change the 4 weapons I have equipped. And to that extent, Matthew is correct.
Maybe pulling the example of changing the legs was a bit extreme, but
but I get what you
changed a lot of stuff.
And I did change the legs every now and then. Oh, I just need that extra bit of health. I'll go with the regular thick boy legs. And that's fine too. I haven't really dug into the tank treads too much. That's for my next playthrough. Yeah, but there is a thing, you're right, where like this guy has a shield. And the most efficient way to bring that shield down is with a pulse weapon. And it's not that like I beat a guy with a shield without a pulse weapon. It just took a ton of rockets. The only thing I want to point out is there's some very cool moments. Like I literally got goosebumps playing this game when characters from earlier in the game showed up, or a city revealed itself to be not a city, but instead something much bigger. Some very cool moments. And like in particular, I told Matthew when we got together the other night to play video games, I was like, there's this tank boss I fought, and he's only vulnerable for like in this very thin area right in the front, right sandwiched between 2 miniguns. And so I staggered him, but my main weapon in my right hand had lost all of its ammo. I used all the ammo up, and he had just a little bit of health left. And so my mech drops the weapon. It just becomes a hand that I can punch with. And so I rocketed in, and I just got the last hit in with a punch, and I've never felt so cool in a video game.
That's cool.
So there are these really cool moments. It's almost like a similar thing Matthew and I both praised with Monster Hunter World in particular, where it just like it sets itself up in a way with the character animations and the enemy animations and attack patterns. You set yourself up for these really like cinematic moments that can really make you feel like I don't know, like you're actually there. And I just don't know if I get that from like, oh, I jumped over a Goomba. It's a me. Not to throw shade on Mario, but you know what I mean? It's just like,
to be fair on Mario Wonder, like they have completely different enemies in that game.
And I
is
feel
a Goomba.
bad.
There is a Goomba, but
I should say though, I love that story you told about going through the level with a group of players. That's very special, and that's unique to that game only. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's the kind of stuff I like calling out.
Okay, so I feel like we talked a lot about all of these games at this point. Obviously, it wouldn't be a game of the year, except for that's true. We'll save it. But I do think we should at this point figure out what our 2 locks are to do our 5.
We
So
just
I
gotta pull
have-
the trigger.
Yeah, I have a suggestion here.
Yeah.
Angus suggested earlier he would take Barotrauma over Armor Core. Matthew, would you take Barotrauma over Armor Core?
Oh, I was gonna take Barotrauma over Remnant 2.
Oh,
Yeah, but
I'm
That's
kind
wrinkle,
of thinking
though.
Remnant 2 stays.
I think so.
yeah,
too.
no, that's fair. That's fair.
I think so too.
I think
I would
think
take Barotrauma over Armored Core to answer your question.
that's fair. That's fair. I think I can live with that. I suppose I can live with
I
that.
also, and I think this is where we're going anyways, like Barotrauma stays, but just for the record, I would have taken Hi-Fi Rush over Barotrauma. if all things
That's
were,
fair.
just more my
Would you
head.
take Super Mario over Hi-Fi Rush?
over
You
Hi-Fi Rush?
definitely would.
Oh, yeah. I played Super Mario Wonder.
So then is what we're looking at here. Then are we looking at putting Super Mario and Barotrauma on the list and dropping Hi-Fi Rush and Armored Core?
Yeah.
Is that
I think
something
so.
that
I think
people can
so.
live with?
I wish I played Armor Core, man. Like I
highly
I
recommend
see
it.
you liking it. I see other people liking it. It feels like my kind of game, and I just didn't get it to it. So
That's okay. Play it next
same.
year.
Yeah.
Don't let it slip away.
Yeah.
I know we'll be busy playing games for next year's episode, but when you have a time, I highly recommend it. I
listen,
think
from
it's well worth.
January to like usually May or June, that's
Dude, you
backlog.
got in-
That's backlog time. I can do whatever
What are you
I
talking
want.
about?
I
What are you
can.
talking about? January, Tekken 8, and
I
Yakuza
know.
Infinite Wealth
I
come
know.
out.
I say that, and yeah,
We're busy right away.
Persona 3 Reload. Anyways,
Ugh.
okay. Are we saying Super Mario Wonder and Barotrauma then? Are we cool with that?
I think so. Matthew,
Yeah.
are you cool with those?
I mean, hey, I got 2 noms onto the top 5 list this year.
That's
My
pretty good.
strategy's coming to fruition.
That alliance is paying off, Matthew.
Yeah.
I feel like
right.
it's a one-sided alliance since Ethan didn't get a nomination on the list.
Yeah, I know.
Ethan's
it's
getting
what I-
Baldur's Gate at the
I
top.
gave
what are you
every-
talking about?
I
Yeah.
gave every opportunity to put Hi-Fi Rush over Barotrauma.
Me too.
I know, but
Well,
you know,
not
I'll just say
everybody.
one last thing.
Mm.
It is very one-dimensional. You go run a little platform, you fight. You run do a little platform, you
Mhm.
fight. You do a little platform, boss, and then it's
If
the
it
same
does
thing.
it really well, that's fine by me. But I get what you
That's
mean.
fair.
I
Yeah,
get what you
yeah,
mean.
yeah. And if
Yep.
the music's
Okay.
good.
So we've got 5.
Let me remind the audience, after all
Holy
of that
shit.
talking, after all
Holy
that talk,
shit.
hey, this is the deliberation process, everyone. What you're hearing is an edited version of that. We're living it. We've been recording for like 3.5 hours.
I already hate Angus.
Yeah,
2.5 hours? I can't remember. Anyways, Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario Wonder, Baldur's Gate 3, Remnant 2, and Barotrauma.
Wow.
I
Was never expecting
what a-
some of those on the list.
It's a testament to this year of games, man. It's
Love it.
insane.
Yeah.
I guarantee no one other podcasts list is looking quite
Facts.
like this.
I only heard of Barotrauma tonight. So
Yeah.
Okay. I'm extending an olive branch, even though it's not my nomination.
Baldur's Gate 3, 5, I know.
Barotrauma number 5.
Barotrauma number 5.
Yeah, it has
I'm
to
willing
be.
to concede
It
that.
has to
Yeah.
be.
Now
has
that
to
now I'm yeah, okay.
It has
now
to be. It was like
now
this
I'm-
close to being cut for so long. We almost said goodbye.
Now I'm yanking the olive branch back. Super Mario Wonder 4.
Yeah, I could see it.
I would
could-
agree.
Yeah, I could see it.
Okay.
My special moment was just for me.
That's okay.
And Ethan
Okay.
played the same game, and
I
unfortunately,
did. It was fun.
For listeners, Ethan is shaking his head and rolling his eyes furiously.
He's making a jerking motion with his hand.
Oh yeah,
and he's
super fun.
snapping the disc in front of me or the case.
Oh, that's funny. And now the hard part. The hard
I
part.
got a spicy take.
I think I've got the same spicy take. Go ahead,
I
Ethan.
have.
Tears of the Kingdom 3.
I agree.
I would kick and scream a bit, but I would.
Okay.
I don't know how much.
What's your suggestion? What's your suggestion?
I would probably
Baldur's
swap.
Gate 3. 3.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, you know what we should do? We should talk about Baldur's Gate because we have
Yeah,
not,
facts.
we have not.
We should. We should. Oh my
It feels
God.
like that situation, and obviously we don't want to spend
Oh,
another.
Garfield.
We don't want to spend another half an hour or 40 minutes talking about one game. So let's try to pull back. But I would say I didn't finish Baldur's Gate 3. it's a game I highly respect. I truly do. It is a game that I have no problem, truly, for it to be our game of the year, number one, if it ends up being that. And I have nothing but amazing, like when people put it as their number one on other sites, I'm like, hell yeah. Like it is such a cool achievement in video games that I feel pushes video games forward. If not always for me, like I have problems with it in the way that like, I don't like its inventory system, for example, in Baldur's Gate 3. I find it very clunky and there's a lot of it. And I guess, you know, you can pick up anything in that game, but like the way it's organized and there's just, it feels like unwieldy to me. And there's moments in the game where I don't mean to do like enter an interaction or I accidentally press something like steal something when I wanted to just talk to somebody. And it initiates the, hey, you're trying to steal from me. Do you want to pay me money, go to jail, or do all this stuff? And I'm like, no. And then that's the moment where I'm like, I fucking didn't save for 40 minutes or 30, like something crazy. And it ends up being like the Mathew situation. Some of it's on me where I need to let things naturally happen more in the way that like, if I really want to like, game this system and roll back, because I'm like, oh man, I really want to see what would happen if I got that roll instead. That's on me because I find myself re-rolling those scenarios a lot.
Oh yeah.
You got FOMO.
I save scum all the time.
And even in, not always in combat, but sometimes in combat.
That's what inspiration's for, though,
For sure. I do find like also the game, this happened to me, and I think I brought this to you, Angus, at one point, but you never felt this. I felt the game was difficult in the some parts in the first act where you would enter an area where you're just so super under-leveled, but you can, it's a game you can go anywhere. Great, awesome. But just because you can go anywhere doesn't mean you can actually be ready to either face or deal with what's happening. I don't mind if the enemy is stronger than me. I care if I can, get away from it. Like, I don't have to go through the combat system. I want to be able to like smartly think my way through it, even if they're stronger than me. And I felt I was kind of, once I was in combat, I couldn't get away for a lot of these moments. And I just had to fucking just rewind and be like, nope, I guess I'm not going to that place for a while.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't run into those situations, and I don't think like I'm an amazing gamer or anything like that. It is one of those things where like I certainly lost a few fights, but I never found myself, my wife and I playing it were like level 8, I think we're level 7 or 8. We're in Act 2. There's one fight where we're like, oh, like we got to Act 2 before we were like, oh, this fight, like I think we should go do other stuff to level up for this fight. But yeah, and that's just a player experience. I mean, I feel like it happens every year. You and I play a game and you're like, man, there's so many bugs. And I'm like, I saw very few or none, I think it's a crapshoot sometimes. But
all that said, I do think it is a very, very cool game. I wonder, like, there are times where I'm like, I don't want to play this because of the not investment of time, but the deep level systems learning that happens in that game for someone who has played some D&D in the past, but there's some things that I feel aren't explained well enough in the game to do. Like, I feel like as you and Mathew, who've played a lot of D&D. I know, Ethan, you haven't played a ton, but like, you know enough to like be able to creatively think your way through some of these situations. As someone like me who has some of that tabletop RPG experience, even I couldn't like get my way through things and work the way I would have done it in a tabletop. Does that make sense?
I have a suggestion. A friend of mine was having
Don't say get good.
No, I won't.
No, that's my suggestion.
I'm honestly going to say kind of the opposite. A friend of mine was playing the game, was also struggling with it, felt overwhelmed, dropped it down to the journey difficulty that's more story focused, and is past me now in the game and is enjoying it a lot more. Yeah, I don't think there's any shame in that. Yeah, I was joking about it earlier. I really don't think there's a shame to playing it on a little bit of an easier difficulty, so that you don't have to invest as much time to really wring out the extra bonuses from those systems,
Sure. And there's obviously it's D&D. There's a zillion abilities that you can do in that game, which is great. Yeah. But I don't have time.
It's not how you want to spend your time.
Look through every ability. I'm like, what are the cool ones? I'll use this for a little bit, whatever. But all that said, I think like the story, the voice acting, the choices that matter. There's just so much to celebrate in the actually, like I will say, like I don't always like being thrown into combat situations. Every once in a while I'm like sweet, but sometimes these combat scenarios take like an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah, sometimes.
And I'm like, oh, I think I just want to talk to someone and go through this way kind of thing. Yeah.
I wanted to highlight something about choices mattering in this game in a way that other games haven't done for me. Just to really highlight something I think that's super positive of Baldur's Gate, in that it's well written, but it's well written from like a lot of different angles. I really like how you interact with each of your party members, and how like you can full on, like there's just party members where I'm like, I'm just not going to engage with you this playthrough. But I know that I'm like, but next time when I need a tank, I'm coming right to you, and we're gonna become best friends. But my friend and I, we're playing a co-op game. We also have a co-op game going, and we're doing an evil playthrough. And my God, I have never had so much fun and seen such a difference in an evil playthrough. I don't know. I feel like we've all played a lot of games where there's like a morality system, and it's like, oh, it all plays out the same, but you're just a little meaner. You know, like I often say that like the evil playthrough in Mass Effect just isn't very fun at times. And kind of lame. But this is like, it's so different. It's like you're getting full on different quests, and you're seeing things, and you're seeing different items, because it's like, well, this person is like, now you're working with this enemy, so they're going to give you something different than, you know, this kind of thing. So I just really appreciate the choices, and I feel myself, and this is the same thing the issue that my friend's having with it, he's overwhelmed by all the choices. But I love knowing that I could come back and play things in a totally different way.
That is cool. This is the game where you're like, okay, if you can have one game for a long time, you can play this game endlessly different ways. And I really think that's very cool. I only played 30, 40 hours of this game. I only played Act 1, and I wanted to... There's a thing with this game where I'm like, oh man, it's so good at updating. Larian's so good at updating this game to the point where I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm just going to wait a little bit, because they keep adding substantial content to this game where I'm like, well, I don't want to play it until I get to play some of that content. And then that content drops, and then they're like, well, we got something else cooking for you. It's a
lot of third act stuff,
like,
but yeah.
Damn it.
I haven't even gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean.
Ethan, Matthew, we've talked a lot. Anything else to say about Baldur's Gate?
It's fantastic. Like the voice acting for every, like Angus alluded to it earlier, the voice acting is incredible for every single one of these characters. Every NPC you meet is voice acted, which is a like Herculean task, I think, to do.
All the animals are voice acted.
Yeah. And that was another thing too. It's like all the animals you could, like, that was one of my favorite abilities, speak to animals and just see what this fucking squirrel is talking about. Or there's like horny ass pig in the grove there. At the start of the game. The narration is really, really cool too. It adds this like it does this DMing, this storytelling element on top of the story itself. The customization is like unmatched. I was a little disappointed by like the character customization, like the faces and bodies and stuff like that. But you know, just thinking about all the iterations they would have to implement it's fine. But the different levels and the skills and the spells, the combinations of everything, and the fact that Larian thought of all these different combinations is incredible, and it all works. And you know, you don't have like 100 different ways to solve something like in Tears of the Kingdom, but I think the 10 ways they give you is so satisfying.
I would even argue that it's even more than 10. Like it is. There is a ton of options you can do in that game for sure.
The one thing that you said about being kind of like harder in the first act, you get thrown into a fight and stuff like that, I actually kind of liken it to the early levels in the tabletop D&D. Like if you're level 1, you are scared for your fucking life. You'll die so fast as level 1, level 2.
Sure.
So like it does like that, and it's a reflection of how well they've adapted 5e into this sort of video game environment. Yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about this game. Like I said, I played it for 150 hours, and I like immediately after the credits roll, I'm like, I got a new idea for another character. I'm going to start another one. And like, you know, I'm almost to act 2 at this point. So,
oh, hell yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Well, with all that said, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it in just a sec, but let's try to nail down 3, 2, 1. I mean, it's Remnant 2 versus Zelda 3 and 2, right? Probably. Is Baldur's Gate 3 1? Is that where we're at?
I have no answer to that.
That's where I'm at.
Because I'm also there too. I would have said that at the beginning of this episode too.
Well, hold on. Let me tell you more about Remnant 2.
Is it too late to bring Barrow Trauma up to? No, go ahead. Yeah, so I think this is maybe the harder choice in here. I don't even fully know which way I lean on. I
think
I
for here,
maybe lean towards Barrow, or for I was about to say Barrow Trauma, towards Remnant a little bit.
You sure?
But I haven't finished either game. I've actually probably put about the same amount of time, probably 12 hours into both games.
I have invested infinitely more time into Remnant 2 than Tears of the Kingdom. And the reason why I do that, well, I mentioned before that my gameplay time these days is limited. I'm not sure if you heard. I have children now. I bring it up in so much. But despite me having kids, I still invest hours into Remnant 2. It is just that tight of a game. Like, and that's the best part, is that at no point when I'm like shooting dudes and stuff, I'm like, well, this aspect of the game didn't feel great. It's just so tight and focused. Man, I'm blanking on the name of the studio, but they knew what they were doing when they made this game. They didn't change more than they had to from the first game. The parts they did change were a net improvement overall. Like, it's just from top to bottom, just a super amazing experience. To sort of juxtapose that against Tears of the Kingdom, there were times in Tears of the Kingdom where I'm like, what am I doing here? Right? Like, I remember going through some challenges up in the sky area, and my reward was like a sword. And I'm like, great, I've got a bag of them. Thank you.
It's gonna break.
Yeah, like when you get a good reward from the game, it feels great. I love the cooler stuff in that game, but the cooler stuff doesn't litter the world. The world is littered with the not cool stuff. Those were the parts that were kind of the low point of Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah. I'm going to have a hard time like facing off against Remnant 2, because I feel like the way you feel about Remnant 2 is the same way I feel about Tears of the Kingdom. It's like the passion is just opposite, I think, in those regards.
I'm trying to work through something here, and I don't, because it feels to me like it's maybe not something that's objectively a good thing or a bad thing. It's just inherent to an open world game versus a linear game. When I butt up against something in Remnant 2, I guess I could go back to a previous area and try and find some side stuff to do. But like if I butt up against something in Tears of the Kingdom, I can just go in a different direction and do something else. I would say that's maybe a positive for Tears. Solid name too. Tears of the Kingdom. Get it? You guys get it? I assume that's why. No, I know they spelled it differently. Yeah, exactly. I know they spelled it like tears, like crying, but I assumed it was kind of.
Well, they do another cool play on words in that, because kingdom represents the area you're playing.
Oh, and who is Zelda?
It's the one in the green dress.
Oh,
I think it's interesting.
The sexy goat guy.
You brought up the point of you're on dad time, and I think Tears of the Kingdom is one of those games that you can play as little or as long as you want. And my play sessions were very much like that. Sometimes I would sit down and I would have, like, anytime I have like a half hour free, I find it hard to boot up any game because I usually want to spend much more than half an hour playing a game. But a game like Tears of the Kingdom, I could be lost in that world for hours at end without me knowing how much time has passed. Or I could really go out with a goal being like, I'm going to do one shrine. I'm going to do one big objective. I'm going to make it down to this tower, get it, save, and then move on with my life and then pick it up later. Like, I played Tears of the Kingdom. I really stretched it out for like 3.5 months. And I really enjoyed that way of playing it instead of like binging it all at once. I found like there was a lot of play value in Tears of the Kingdom.
You know what? I was initially more wowed by Tears of the Kingdom than by Remnant. I enjoyed my time with Remnant more than I did Tears of the Kingdom, but Tears of the Kingdom certainly packed more of a wow factor. There's a lot more mechanical depth from a game design perspective. Like, the game is truly a feat in the same way that Baldur's Gate sort of elevates narrative and decision making. Tears of the Kingdom elevates open world survival games. Like, it truly does feel as the final form of an open world survival game. I don't know where they go from there.
Yeah, I don't know either. Even like a mechanic like building, which I know some of these people like Angus and Ethan, it didn't really jive with you or whatever, but like
could have been a whole other game.
Man, the fact that you can like throw, you have so much onus to be able to make whatever the fuck you want. You could put rockets in like different directions and like put another thing on top of it, and you can keep fusing things for what seems like forever, and then you just hit go, and then you can see what happens. And I think that's just, I don't know, it's cool without the game just being like, yeah, it's too much, shut down kind of thing. And on a fucking Nintendo hardware, right? Like,
It's basically last gen.
it's basically last gen, and the fact that it runs pretty good. Like, it's not perfect. There's frame rate dips here and there, but like for what it's doing and how much they put in that game and how small that file size compared to like fucking AAA games that are like 200 gigs or whatever. Like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom's like 15 gigabytes, and
Wow.
yet it is doing so much, you know.
For the mechanical elements, the game design aspects alone, I'll give the edge to Tears of the Kingdom. Remnant 2, as good of an experience it is, like, it's not a wholly different game from Remnant 1. It is just a better version of it. It's actually not too dissimilar from how Breath of the Wild is. But regardless, Tears of the Kingdom, if we're talking about the aspect of improving on what came before, Tears of the Kingdom truly does feel like the final stage of that game, whereas Remnant, I feel, still has a bit more room to grow.
I definitely get what you mean. Like, I have no idea what the next Zelda game is going to be.
They
It
said
can't
it's
just be
not-
more of that.
No, they said they're not doing that
Give it
anymore.
a break. Yeah, make
Yeah.
something new, Nintendo.
That's what they said they're going to do. They're
Or
not-
do this-
Zelda's gonna be a boy.
what?
Or do a new Star Fox, you fucking cowards. Make a new Star Fox.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Open world. Build your own spaceship.
that'd be cool.
So-
Crash Land,
and-
No Man's
Very
Sky.
sick. Yeah, Star Fox Adventure is a great game.
Oh, fucking
It is fun, but it's just Zelda. So that's all
Yeah, but there's flying. Pew, 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 pew.
And you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
feed a little Triceratops.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
I think we came to the conclusion here, but I will say the final boss in Tears of the Kingdom, fucking sick. That's all.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, it just culminates in a big story moment, which I don't really expect in the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. Like, I don't know, Breath of the Wild just set me up in a way that I'm just like, okay, the story's just there. It's my own adventure.
Yeah,
But Tears of
the
the
story
Kingdom,
is definitely better in Tears of the Kingdom.
It is,
dude, it's
absolutely.
like shockingly good. Like that's how
And
I-
that goat man is surprisingly sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Right?
His torso, his abdomen is so
Like
long.
the hips and the
Oh, yeah.
long torso. Are you kidding me?
It's hot.
It's a lot of like sheer fabric too. It's very strange.
Should we say then, after all that discussion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Remnant 2, 3, Tears of the Kingdom 2, Baldur's Gate 3, 1?
God, that's confusing. But yes, 100%.
you got it.
Yeah, wow.
Could have worded that better.
Could I have worded that better? I'm just saying the name of the game.
Should we get Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon in there just to get a 6 in the 5 list?
I mean, Street Fighter 6 back as well.
Oh, we'll get both 6s in there.
All right. After all that deliberation, we have our fucking list. Holy shit. Here we go. Number 5, Barrow Trauma. Number 4, Super Mario Wonder. Number 3, Remnant 2. Number 2, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe that's longer than Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. And number 1, Baldur's Gate 3. Very deserving of our number 1 spot this year, I think.
It's one of those things where like it was like a no-brainer last year when we were like, well, obviously Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And I did not expect it to happen again, but like truly, I'm just like I'm so blown away by this game, and I'm so happy that it's gotten the success that I think it deserves. Essentially,
Yeah, small indie studio.
yeah, good for them.
I like Baldur's Gate so much that I feel like I put myself through like a delayed gratification on sometimes playing it, which is a bad thing. One, in the way that is like, I want more updates to come out before. I know it's a game that I'm only going to play once because I play so many different video games throughout the year. So I'm like, I gotta get the ultimate version of the game, but they keep improving it. So when is that going to happen? That's my fault.
Baldur's Gate 4.
Baldur's Gate 4.
Oh,
That's right. That's
God,
right.
let them rest.
Exclusive for the Google Stadia. All right, everyone. Holy shit. I can't believe
Holy
we
shit!
did it.
Honorable mention. Time.
I
Whoa.
am just going to read our Google Sheet that we've create every year. If you want to say like a 2-second thing as I read it, go for it. Otherwise, every year what we do for Game of the Year, peek behind the curtain, is we just make a Google Sheet of the games that we played. Some of them are good. Some of them aren't on our top 5 or 10, and some of them are, I don't know why they're even mentioned. So here are those games. Baldur's Gate 3, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Super Mario Wonder, Pikmin 4. Love Pikmin 4. Great game.
Yeah.
It came out of nowhere. Fire Emblem Engage. Who picked
Probably the most Fire Emblem one of their games has been in a long while, but it's still not all that great.
Not as good as the last one, Three Houses.
I enjoyed it more than Three Houses.
Oh, okay.
But like I'm talking like back in the day of Sacred Stones or just Fire Emblem for Game Boy Advance or Path of Radiance. Like all the anyways. I got nostalgia for that genre. Anyways,
for sure. Remnant 2, World of Horror, Armored Core 6, Wolong, Dynasty, I assume. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Ethan, you played that. I think you said
I
it was
did.
good.
Yeah, I did not like it.
Yeah, no, it's
bummer.
like Neo, but not fun.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Oh, that's a shame.
I got half. So funny story. I got to, I don't know. I got to a point where I'm like, I got to be close to the end of the game here, and I was halfway through it. I'm just like, fuck this, I'm out.
No, damn, that sucks. I remember the day you messaged me, like, hey, listen, I got Wolong, you can download it. I'm like, we'll see.
I had a similar conversation with Matthew when he was playing it, I think.
Yeah.
Dredge. I really wanted to play Dredge. I missed out.
It was fun. It's a good like cozy game.
Okay. Like a Dragon, Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name. Great name.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
It's not. It doesn't shine like some of the other.
Sure. It's like a
Yakuza
side
game.
adventure, right? So
Yeah, it's pretty short too. Like I'm just about done it, I think.
Angus's Game of the Year, Starfield.
Hey, whoa! You skipped over one that I want to
did.
talk about real quick.
Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
I don't normally like to praise EA. This game is surprisingly good. The collectibles were fun. The puzzles were fun. The combat was fun. I played through the whole thing. The story was good. A lot of people ran into bugs. I had one bug where I fell through the floor and had to reset. That was it. I just want to point out when a company that normally makes shitty games actually makes a good one, and there aren't a ton of microtransactions in it, at least at the moment of this recording. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, surprisingly good. The most fun I've had involving Star Wars in a very long time.
Okay. All right. I know that
Starfield. Terrible.
Starfield. Okay.
I played 2.5 hours of it. I'm so glad I got it as a gift and did not spend money on it.
I heard you
Same
had
here.
to get
Same
to.
here.
I heard you had to get to hour 12 to start having.
No,
fun.
thank you. I'll pass.
I heard you have to beat the game and then it's fun.
I've heard that too. I've heard that too. That's fucked. No way. That's crazy. Mortal Kombat 1.
Get over here.
Play it for 20 minutes, went back to Baldur's Gate.
I beat the story mode, but after I was done that, there wasn't a ton. The single player stuff that looked cool at release wasn't actually that good.
Final Fantasy 16.
Oh, long story short, slavery's bad. Who knew? Oh my god,
Man, that game part of the game is really fun. But there's
dude,
a
if you
lot
like
of,
the Ifrit fights, I swear to God, you'll love Armor Core.
I just like even the basic combat of Final Fantasy 16. Fucking awesome. But
music's
doesn't
really good too.
drag. God damn it. Viewfinder, cool game. Cocoon, also very cool game. Street Fighter 6, Harry Potter, Hogwarts Legacy.
It's stuck in the same trappings as every other open world game. You go around and do a bunch of meaningless shit for equipment you don't care about.
But you're a wizard.
That part's cool.
Yeah.
Wish there was more of that.
Horizon Call of the Mountain. That's a shout out to the PSVR 2 exclusive game. It
Not
blew
bad.
my mind in terms of just like, whoa, VR graphically can look very cool. Game itself is pretty okay. Alan Wake 2, Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line. That's probably my favorite rhythm game of the year, but I haven't played a lot of rhythm games this year. But it's really cool. It's just Final Fantasy, but rhythm. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. Heard it's good.
Cool game.
Looks cool. Yeah, it looks cool.
Yep.
Sea of Stars. I really wanted to play it, but I missed out.
It was free on
really need to come
PlayStation.
back to that.
I downloaded it. I started playing it. I didn't love it.
No? Okay.
I didn't get through the tutorial though.
Okay, well, yeah. That'll do it. Hi-Fi Rush, Lies of P also looked good. Diablo 4. I can't believe a Diablo game came out this year and nobody's talking about it anymore. That's so crazy. Ethan and I were this close to getting it. I remember we're like, yo, we getting this game? Yeah, we're getting this game.
I was so excited by that beta, and then when it came out, it was like Street Fighter 6 came out at the same time, and I'm just like, I can't do two games at once anymore.
Yeah, I know. Planet of Lana, never heard of it.
The cute little Game Pass game looks like Limbo.
Cool. Oh, I like that. RE4 Remake, Age of Wonders 4, Persona 5 Tactica. I put that there. That's what I'm currently playing. If you like a tactics game,
Looks good.
pretty good. It's pretty good. Very slow start, though. Dave the Diver, really cool game.
Looks so fun.
That's on my top 10. Advanced Wars Reboot Camp 1 and 2, pretty good. Moss, I don't think this came out this year, but cool.
I think it did. Oh, didn't it?
No, because Moss.
Oh, on the
yeah.
on the PlayStation Store, they both came out this year. It said anyway, VR game, cool perspective, platformer, fixed angle perspective, but still in VR. Very cool idea. That's the kind of innovation I want to see.
It is a cool game. Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising, Jusant, heard it's good. Ethan, you played that, I assume?
I did. Yeah, I started it. I'm definitely going to be beating it. Cool, chill, mountain climbing game.
Ooh,
I like that.
that sounds awesome.
It's
Cyberpunk
sick.
2077, Phantom
This was
Liberty.
the one. This was the one I almost nominated over Resident Evil 4. Cyberpunk, if you were ever curious about playing it, please go play it. It's the redemption story that it deserves. It's phenomenal. 2.0 is great. They changed a lot of the mechanics, but it's still the same game. Haven't made it to the Phantom Liberty content yet, if I'm being honest.
Oh, that was the other game you were going to do. I thought it was going to be Spider-Man.
Nah, man.
Spider-Man.
Nah, Spider, dude. Love Spider-Man, though.
Spider-Man's
Great game.
It's a great game. Lords of the Fallen.
Good game. If you like Dark Souls 3, you'll like Lords of the Fallen. But at times it is the wrong type of difficult.
Okay. And Chained Echoes, which keeps getting removed and added
Oh,
to
Did
this
that come
list.
out this year?
I thought it did. That's the one I was when we talked about CS Stars. I was like, play this one instead. I think. Yeah. Oh no. My apologies. Last year, strike it from the record.
Kill it.
Kill it. Made by one guy. Very impressive.
That's our honorable mentions list. You'll see our ordered list or just a list of our favorite personal games on the website at www.podcavern.com. But once again, holy shit, everyone, we fucking did it. Another year in the books, our 7th year of doing this. It's one of my favorite podcasts to prepare for, which is, it puts so much work into playing all these games just for this episode. So that's why these episodes are always so long, but I fucking love it. Angus, Ethan, Matthew, thanks again for being on the cast. Is there anything you want to plug, or on top of what you want to plug, say what you're most looking forward to next year?
Ooh, I assume you mean game.
I guess.
Okay, so real quick, Matthew and I host a podcast together called Heroes Don't Do Paperwork. It's an improvised comedy interview show where we play characters who interview people with superpowers in a city full of superheroes. We just had our 100th episode that's coming out the week we're recording this, so perfect time to jump in. And I'm most looking forward to either Tekken 8 or the survival game Nightingale. Probably lean a bit more towards Tekken 8, but I hope Nightingale's good.
Amazing. With that, Matthew, anything you want to additionally plug, or also what are you looking forward to next year?
I got nothing to plug at this particular time. In terms of what I'm looking forward to, I am eager to hear more about the Elden Ring DLC. I'm anticipating hearing something about it early 2024. Remnant 2 has some additional DLC content that should be released through late winter into early spring. So those are kind of really, that's just stuff that's already been out, though. As for what's coming out, I don't know. I always like to be pleasantly surprised. So we'll see what comes.
Amazing. Ethan, what do you got?
Hey, no plugs this time around. I think I've said this on the other podcast I was on, but I've kind of closed the chapter on the music biz. But if you wanted to, you can go check out Dead Sect rap music on Spotify and things. But for video games, looking forward to Tekken 8, obviously.
Baby.
And I'm really hoping Hollow Knight Silk Song comes out this year, man.
Oh my God, we keep talking.
I fucking hope it comes out.
Dude, a couple years ago, I was like, I'm really looking forward to Cyberpunk, and it hit a disastrous launch. And then I was like, I'm really looking forward to Little Devil Inside. Still hasn't come out.
Oh my God.
I probably just jinxed Tekken 8.
Yeah,
Are you getting it on PC, Ethan?
I haven't decided yet.
Ooh.
What are you getting it on?
I can't decide. I got my fight stick on my plate. Anyway, we'll talk later.
I feel like it should be on your PlayStation then. Anyways.
Well, but no, not conveniently placed. It's too up high. Cut this all out. Cut this all out.
For myself, you can find the rest of the shows in Podcavern at www.podcavern.com. Check out all the shows, review, share it, please. It means a lot. We put a lot of work in these podcasts, and it's cool to be supported in those ways. Not just this show, but all the cool shows in the Podcavern. And I'm looking forward to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I love that shit. So we will see how that changes, because they fucking spoilers. They changed what's happening in Final Fantasy VII. It's a full remake. Cool. Who knows? And with that, I just want to close with repeating the number ones of previous years, starting from 2017. Actually was Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Okay.
Was our number one.
Yep. That makes sense.
Great memory, Angus. 2018, God of War. Great game. Mm-hmm. Great game.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man was number 2. Okay, Angus.
Spider-Man should have been number 1. And also,
probably not.
2017, Persona 5 came out that year. Are you crazy? Anyway.
Yeah.
I know that was kind of a
but
oversight.
I played through Persona 5 Royal earlier this year. So 2019 Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice.
Nice.
Good game.
You lent it to me. It's still on my shelf. I've never played it.
Hey, it's still a great game, but it was a weird year.
Game.
It was a weird year.
It was.
That was like Devil May Cry 5, Outer Wilds, Monster Hunter World, Iceborne, Apex Legends.
Love Devil May Cry.
Good year, but weird year.
Weird year.
2020 Hades.
Oh, so good.
Dude,
I
that
picked
was
it up the other day.
Hades 2
It's
this year.
still so good.
It's not this year, is it?
I think it's this year, so I'm
might
also
be.
looking forward to that as well. I think it is.
We got another wild year ahead of us.
2021 Inscription.
Oh, did you guys see the trailer for the new game from that studio?
I did. Looks good.
No, I haven't actually.
Oh, look it up. I forget what it's called. It looks amazing.
What
it
are you?
looks-
Pony Island 2?
Yeah. Yeah, it might be Pony Island too.
2022 Elden Ring, obviously.
Of course.
And
Nice.
yeah, we got Baldur's Gate 3. So boom. What
The
a
Hall of Champions.
listen. Now we're all gonna go hibernate, save a bit of money so we can afford some video games next year.
Don't throw me back in the pod
Yeah, I'm
cavern.
gonna throw you back in the box. I always plug this, but check out your local library. I saved hundreds of dollars this year playing video games. So if you can find ways to game share with other people, get it from the library, you can probably game your way so you don't have to pay full price.
My wife told me to plug Power Washer Simulator. She loves it, and I totally forgot until just now.
Great. Amazing. If you like to power wash stuff.
It's pretty fun.
All right. Well, that's it for us.
Don't forget to save your
game.
game. Save your game, everybody.
And-
Everybody, save your game right now. Save your game.
F5.
Right,
F5.
right now. Bye, everyone.